Good afternoon. Come on. Oops. Good afternoon. There we go. Yeah. Good to see all of you, especially as we begin this journey for 23. So we'll call to order now the Human Resources Appropriations hearing for the 23 budget. It sounds kind of amazing, isn't it, that we're there, and there's a lot of good things in it. I know a lot of great ideas too. Before we get started, if y'all would just join me for a moment and a moment of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today and just ask that you open our ears and our hearts as we listen to some of these very difficult challenges in our state and help to find pathways to make the journey better and the burden lighter. Thank you for all that you do for our great state of Georgia. Amen. Okay, so we are going to start off today, first of all, with the Department of Human Services. And I believe Craig Foster is here to start us off. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee. Unfortunately, Commissioner Brose is unable to be with us today due to some health issues. So unfortunately for y'all, as well as me, I'm going to have to stand in her place. But with me, I also have Deputy Chief of Staff Chris Hempling, our CFO Demetrius Taylor, and his deputy Cliff O'Connor, as well as some of the members from our governmental affairs team. So as to not underwhelm you with my actual knowledge of the budget, I'm actually going to allow Demetrius and Cliff to walk through it with you and then answer any questions that you may have. So if that's all right with you, Madam Chair, I will sit down now.
Senator Oliver, we have an extra one, I think. Karen, do you have one? Yeah, let's see. Yes, she needs hers too. Because everybody got the materials, right? Okay, so let's get started. Thank y'all.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Dempsey and committee members. The presentation I'm presenting to you today was written by the commissioner, so I just wanted you to know that, didn't make it up. As the commissioner mentioned in her prior budget hearing before the subcommittee, our workforce is deeply thankful to the governor and the first lady for the proposed workforce package, which includes a historic $5,000 pay increase, an enhanced employer 401k match, and the option to withdraw leave pay. This would be greatly helpful to us in retaining our important staff. You'll see in each of the respective program budgets in fiscal year 23 adjustments to reflect these workforce changes and incentives, and there will be some other statewide adjustments in the program budgets. For the sake of time, I'm only going to cover adjustments that are specific to our programs so that we can walk through those initiatives. I'm going to start with the Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Program budget, which is on page 6, line 28.3.5. You'll see a yes item to reflect $1,100,533 in collections for marriage and divorce filing fees as a result of House Bill 511, all for the Children's Trust Fund. There is no change in total funding support for these services. This is a recognition of earmarked state revenues versus general fund revenues. Next, I'd like to move to the Community Action Treatment Team Pilot Program. If you go to the Child Welfare Services Program budget, you go to the top of page 7, starting with line 28.5.6, you'll see $1.5 million in state funding slated for Community Action Treatment Team Pilot Program for youth in foster care or at risk of entering foster care. This concept originated from a Florida model using 24/7 treatment teams comprised of a physician, behavior aides, therapist, a social worker, and an administrative support specialist. State officials deployed these strike teams to serve high needs children, medically, behaviorally challenged, or both, in that child's home, if possible, delivering tailored care and increasing the odds of that family remaining intact. Although our model may ultimately differ from Florida's, we know that with your blessing, our agency could pilot these healthcare teams and deliver care where families need it most, at home, in person, available around the clock, and ideally avoiding foster care entirely. The next item we'd like to talk about is the Autism Assessment Pilot, which you'll find again on the Child Welfare Services program. It's line item 28.5.7. You'll see $451,978 for an autism assessment pilot, Region 12, which covers Byron, Bullock, Camden, Chatham, Effingham, Glenn, Liberty, Long, and McIntosh counties. Working with Dr. Michelle Zena, a physician in South Georgia who specializes in diagnosing and treating children with autism spectrum disorder, and Georgia Southern University, we're finalizing a proposal to screen every child in foster care in Region 12 for autism. And ideally, we will publish our findings on the prevalence of autism on youth in state custody. As the commissioner mentioned in the prior joint budget hearing, we've got anecdotal evidence showing that the prevalence of autism among children in foster care is higher than in the general population. This project will help us better understand whether we're failing to accurately diagnose it, calling it something else, or improperly treating it. The next item is autism respite care. It's right beneath that. This remaining new item in the program budget is $1 million for autism respite care. This funding will allow our agency to contract with providers to offer more respite services for families, not just for children in foster care, but also for those families experiencing burnout, when caregivers may consider relinquishing their rights if there's no reprieve on the horizon. With your support, we'll be able to make life-changing improvements for our most vulnerable children. Next, I'd like to move on to the provider rate increase in the out-of-home care program budget. It's on page 8, line 28.13.1. You'll see $27,810,584, reflecting a 10% across-the-board rate increase for our foster families, child placing agencies, and child caring institutions, the people and organizations which house and care for the children in state custody, foster care custody. At this moment, we have roughly 10,500 youth under 18 in foster care and 500 young adults between 18 and 21 being served by the department. For the state's children in foster care, 35% are with child placing agencies, 32% are with defects foster homes, 19% are placed with relatives, and 14% are placed with child caring institutions. The state pays each of these entities a contracted per diem to care for our youth in foster care, ranging from $25.27 to $29.65 per day. For a defects foster family, $77.93 a day to $179.65 per day. For a child placing agency, which is our private foster homes, and $108.47 a day to $225.86 a day for a child in a child caring institution. These rates are contingent on the level of supervision required for that specific child, directly related to their placement needs. The impact that this new funding will have on recruitment and retention of high-quality caregivers for children in foster care cannot be overstated. These providers aren't in the business for the money, nor the child placement agencies or the child caring institutions. But for a foster family, we're talking about giving more flexibility to meet the needs of the children in their homes. It means that our group home providers can recruit quality staff to care for children with unique needs. And it means that our foster parents are better positioned to deal with the inflation that is happening with food, shelter, and clothing costs. And perhaps most importantly, as we continue to battle the effects of COVID, workforce challenges, and inflation, these increases will prevent foster families and other providers from leaving the ranks of our system. In the same program budget out of home care, on line 28.13.3, you'll see a yes item for $6.7 million to improve the continuum of care, including preventive and therapeutic services, in addition to addressing youth with complex needs. Notably, the out-of-home care program budget is not only where we pay for foster parents, child placing agencies, child caring institutions, it's also where we pay for what we call supplemental supervision, which covers a spectrum of wraparound services like behavior aids, as well as hoteling costs. The term hoteling encompasses the rates for children who are left in a hotel, being supervised by a private agency or in a county office. It covers that child's meals and transportation, as well as the remaining incidental costs of his or her supervision. Hoteling stems from a lack of foster families and group homes able to accept a youth who has complex needs, be it medical, mental, or behavioral. Over the past few months, we've piloted enhanced provider rates on a case-by-case basis to get specific children out of hotels in our offices and to remove them into appropriate placements that are tailored to meet their needs. We are also paying outright for certain health services so that a child's behaviors don't jeopardize their current placements. with a foster family, a group home, or a private placement agency. This flexible state funding affords us the flexibility that we need to dramatically reduce hoteling, cut through bureaucratic red tape to get a child in state custody, what she or he needs. And it pairs them with the services that they need to stabilize their placement. This concludes the commissioner's remarks on the governor's budget recommendations for the Department of Human Services budget for state fiscal year 23. And we will be glad to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you. From the committee, are there any questions?
Good job.
Yeah, good. Okay, let me just ask a couple of things. So I happen to have spoken with one of my juvenile court judges today, actually. The current trend on adoptions, I know there's some pause things happening there. What, in the context of the pandemic or other issues about moving adoptions?
I mean, overall, the adoption numbers have still trended upwards. So we've been seeing about 3% a year growth in adoptions, but there have been some reports in specific jurisdictions where either due to the court process or turnover in staff that finalizing the adoption can be slowed up sometimes because it's a two-step legal process to getting the kid through adoptions. So the overall numbers are still going in the right direction, but we believe there are opportunities to make it increase even faster.
Right. And as I understand it, some of these children too, who are our toughest or some of the hardest to place, of course. I've also had some conversations about how that can also keep children sort of in a queue where they begin to age out as well. So is there anything that's watchful, particularly, I don't mean like tracking, but necessarily watching to see as children get older and older?
Yeah, usually in our system, we have hundreds of kids coming into foster care every month and hundreds leaving. So there's a wide distribution. That the mathematical average is around 9 months. Typically, what you will see that a kid who's being targeted for adoptions will have been in foster care for at least 2 years. I mean, the federal government set some legal standards that when a child is in foster care for an extended period of time, that if we can't resolve the safety situation that's going on with the biological parents, that we start looking adoptions very seriously. So that actually is one of the criteria where a child can become eligible for adoptions, is being placed in foster care for 2 years. So there is very much a correlation with that 2-year clock and then tending to start up moving through the process of terminating parental rights. It can be sometimes a challenging legal proceeding because it is a kind of the ultimate strike in terms of what the child welfare system can do to a biological parent. So it requires quite a bit of legal work. And then sometimes our workers may have not been through an adoption before, and they have to learn how to work through that process with our legal representatives to take it through that process. But it's usually that after the 2 years, you usually start to see those cases starting to move through the adoption process, which itself can take a year or two easily to get through.
Okay. And when you mention your workers, I know workforce is an issue for everyone in our state right now. Just, you know, how are y'all doing? How's it? And I know it's different depending on where we're talking about, but.
Our overall workforce on the child welfare and the eligibility side is staying relatively flat, which is frustrating us, frankly. We're trying to drive it up a little bit. We're running slightly beneath budget. And so we're hiring significant numbers of people, but we're also losing a significant number of people out the back door. So we're really hoping that this pay adjustment and the adjustments on retirement system and those kinds of things will really help us to recruit, because it's really a tough labor market out there right now.
It is. It is. Well, y'all are certainly a spot where we want to make sure that you have the best and the right people working to help prevent, but then also to help families get back together as well. Representative Oliver, did you have a question?
Do you know what percentage of your DHR workforce makes less than $35,000 a year?
I don't know off the top of my head. I will say that on the child welfare side, the starting pay is $35,300, so that almost everybody would, except for administrative support side. On the eligibility side, the starting pay is only $27,000. So we'll have a lot of eligibility workers, significant percentage that could be beneath that on the eligibility side. And our staff is roughly in defects, half child welfare and half eligibility.
I ask because it's trying to, and I'm sure you're thinking more sophisticated way than I am. This $5,000 pay increase is really going to benefit a lot of people at the lower end. And that I'm very interested in see how that works. And you're going to be able to tell us.
Yeah. The eligibility staff, they're only making as a starting pay $13 an hour.
Right.
So we're really competing with Target and McDonald's. And there's a lot of work. They have to learn a very complicated computer system, deal with a lot of clients. The average caseload's 900 to 1. So it's sometimes hard to convince people it's the right choice to come as an eligibility worker. So we're certainly hoping that there'll be a big impact to make us more competitive. Sometimes people go into social work because it's a passion, but eligibility work, usually people don't know about it till they're looking for a job, and then they see it on a job board somewhere and then think about applying, and they're perhaps.
And in the future, you'll tell us whether this pay increase helped.
Yes.
Do you track what percentage of your foster care children are outside the 15 to 22 month compliance with federal law to move a child towards adoption, permanent placement? Do you track that?
I believe our system does, our Shine system.
What percentage of your children are outside the 15 to 22 month requirement that you move forward?
I don't have that, Representative Oliver, but we'll have to get back to you.
Thank you.
Provide you that number.
Thank you.
That's great. Let's send that number to Amber too, as well, so that
Yes, sir.
she has it. Are there any other questions here? Do we have anyone online joining us too? I didn't know if we had anyone, if there might. I know, but no questions at this point. Okay, so I have one other one then. We still hear from members that their offices are closed and the frustration of not being able to get in there. And I know it is, you can call, but that can be a little bit tricky too for some people. Do we have any timeline moving forward? I know particularly sort of in the South Georgia area, I've heard a number of complaints this week.
Mhm. I mean, the commissioner has been working with the managers and child welfare and eligibility services. Because we're still somewhat constrained by our staff, the current project that they're trying to work through is to find 50, we're calling them hubs, that could be located around the state. We have, of course, 159 counties, and normally we're operating an office in every county. We don't believe we're staffed well enough right now to open everywhere right away. But what we're trying to do is open 50 hub offices. Hopefully in the next month would be ideal. In March, we're hoping to start getting those open at least part-time, several days a week, so that people who want to come in, especially on the eligibility side, and schedule an appointment or a review can do that. The social work staff tend to work a lot more in the field, but the eligibility staff, while they're very remote, sometimes people get confused and would rather come in and meet with you face-to-face to process an eligibility application or a review. So we're trying to set that up so that we can do a face-to-face. I mean, right now they're scheduling face-to-face, but they have to open up the office to bring them in. So this would set perhaps several days a week, limited hours where people can schedule and know that the office is already going to be open.
So are all doing that? Are all offices throughout the state?
We're looking at to start
scheduling?
with 50 hubs, but just because we don't think we have the staff right now to appropriately do it with all 159 offices.
Mhm.
Obviously, we'd be looking to try and expand that as we can hire some more staff and, overcome the impact of COVID a little bit more.
Do we have certain places in the state where just the workforce is not there for the eligibility?
I think that's part of what the commissioners asked those two program directors to look at,
Mhm.
because geographical distribution is the one criteria, but having staff to actually man that office is the other part of that. So those are the two big criteria that are being used to look at which offices to open.
Well, I would encourage y'all to do it as soon as you can. It is one of the loud questions that I hear very frequently when a constituent calls a member and says, I can't get anybody.
Yes.
They usually when they need y'all, they need you right then, I would say. So,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, anything we can do to help with that, just let us know. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, we do. Representative Barton.
I just got a question about, I would use an acronym, but the Special Assistant Attorney General, the SAGs, or whatever. I was asked about it before I got here and everything, and looking into it now and finding out that they only, I think, had $1 raise maybe since 18. again, turnover, it's kind of hard to get people to do that job. And can you
Right.
tell a little bit about that?
We actually hire a lot of legal services. Like just in defects, we're paying about $20 million a year to the Attorney General's office, who actually hires those lawyers. The rates are usually, I think, $57.50 or $60 an hour, depending upon the kind of case that they're handling, which in the legal world is not an overpowering rate. Right now, there have been issues brought to our attention that the Attorney General's office is having some challenges retaining the number and quality of SAG staff.
That's why I
that
asked
they
the question.
prefer. Yeah. Right now, there's nothing in the budget request to deal with that specific issue. So you'd have to do something at your level if that was your preference.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, that's another concern I think that we've heard from as well, because on the information I have, they are, if not the least paid, they're very close to it of the SAGs throughout our state. So,
Yes.
and I know they do an awful lot of work. Representative Oliver, again.
I'm glad you brought that issue up. You're the Attorney General's biggest client. And DOT pays their lawyers $200, $250, $300 an hour. And at some point, I remember being engaged in this discussion where there was an increase in the past. And when you said $57 an hour, that reminds me that we haven't had an increase in that number in at least 10 years, or is it more like 15 years?
I only recall one increase in the last 10 years, in my memory.
And so this is an area where, and that is the area, those are the lawyers that work on the adoption cases and work on the termination of parental rights. And since you were one of the good SAGs back there working for $57 an hour, you can talk really thoughtfully about why we haven't raised that rate when we're raising it for the DOT.
Yes, ma'am. Prior to coming to the state office, I was a special assistant attorney general in Newton and Rockdale counties. When I started as a SAG in 2012, we were first making $52.50, and since 2012, through your all's support, there have been two increases. The first one, I believe, was a $5 increase up to $56.50 at that time, and then a year later, there's another $1 increase. I actually just came from a SAG seminar where we were gathering all of our SAGs and making sure that everybody was operating from best practices. And many of those conversations at the SAG seminar was about how difficult it is really to bring in new talent to make sure that we are operating the best child welfare system that we can.
The child support recovery lawyers, they make that same baked rate.
It's my
too, don't they?
understanding. And Chair, I think to your point, out of all of the SAGs, DFAC SAGs and aging SAGs and child support SAGs are the lowest paid SAGs. But the anecdote or the story that one of the SAGs said, he had an associate, and I may actually be stealing his thunder. I wonder if he, okay, that's fine. Oh, there you are, Jack. He had an associate, and again, the associates at most would be making $57.50. Had an associate leave for private practice at some firm, and they were going to pay her $150 an hour. And we just can't compete with that. But I think our children deserve, and the agency deserves, high quality legal representation in order to achieve permanency and do the terminations and keep moving children as much as we possibly can towards that permanency, hopefully back to the.
And we're periodically being fined by failure to comply with certain timetables. It's costing us money for not doing it.
Yes, Representative.
And I won't steal Chris's thunder, but I'm Jack Over and I'm on the list to speak
Thank you.
later on.
Thank you.
We'll look forward.
You
We'll
can
look forward
credit
to that.
Representative Barton over there.
Yeah, thank you. So we have Representative Anulowicz, I think, joining us Zoom with a question.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually down the hall and I'll be in shortly. But I wanted to thank Representative Barton for bringing up the issue of the SAGs and thank Chairman Oliver for pointing out the discrepancies in what SAGs make when they do work for other agencies, because I don't want to diminish the work that any of those attorneys do for these other agencies. They're doing important work that we need to have done, but I'm really glad that we're talking about this issue because I think it is something that we need to give a lot of thoughtful consideration to.
Thank you. Rosa Mathiak, did you?
Underway.
Okay, okay, great. Well, thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate you jumping in and making sure we had the information
Our
too.
pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, next, our child advocate is here to present again, Jerry Bruce, the director. Online, excuse me, he's online, so.
Madam Chair, thank you. Can everybody see and hear me? Okay.
We are hearing you. We're gonna try to see you.
It's okay if you can't see me. I've had COVID for the last week and there's really nothing to look at left.
Okay, well, better, and you just, there you are.
My
There you
first
go.
day actually upright in so long that I, hope I can get through this okay. Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members, for allowing me to present virtually. I would never do this unless there were really exigent circumstances. I know this budget process is a very high priority for us. And so I really am very grateful for you for allowing me to come and croak my way through this presentation for you virtually today. I just presented to you recently on the subject of the amended budget because we're so there were so many issues that overlap between our request for the amended budget and our request for the big budget in 23. I think I can save a lot of time in going forward. Can everybody see my slides okay?
Yes, we're seeing them.
Okay. So basically, I introduced myself last time. I was a SAG for a long time prior to becoming a juvenile court judge and then the state's court improvement program director before coming to OCA. So I have a very wide exposure to all the aspects of our child welfare system. And clearly, I think, see the Office of the Child Advocate for the Protection of Children's place in that wider system. It's something that the legislature, when they created us in our statute in 1511-740, gave a very high priority to. We're not obviously the only child protective services outfit in the state. You've just heard from the biggest one, and we're not frontline. We don't respond to the frontline requests that DFACS responds to, but our job is to make sure that children don't fall through the cracks of a very large system and that they're protected from violations of law and policy by the state agencies who are there working to help them. So in a real sense, we're the ombudsman for Georgia's entire child welfare system. What I need to say next, I think, is that I think when I came last time and talked to y'all, excuse me, I might not have made clear enough our sort of budgetary situation and the context of that situation, which I'd like to do very quickly before I show you again our workload data. And that is that it became clear to me after becoming the director of OCA that we were dealing with very antiquated technology, very antiquated ways of keeping track of our work. We don't have a case management system. We're in the process of getting one. I talked to you about that a little bit last time. I don't want to belabor that, but I think what I might not have made clear enough at the time was that, excuse me, the process of determining where we were with our work and our kind of finding our position in the context of our statutory duties took a long time. It's not something that was immediately clear to us. I couldn't just pull down data immediately. Our agency administrator, Brenda Jones, and I, as well as my deputy, Jen Carreras, had to work sifting through spreadsheets manually, trying to come up with our numbers, find out where we are, what our caseload looks like, what our workload is likely to look like in the near future. Excuse me, I have to get a drink of water every couple of sentences. And it wasn't really clear to us exactly where we were until just before this budget process really started. So I don't want to give the impression that because we are asking for an increase over the initial recommendations that we are in any way, excuse me, implying that OPB or the governor's office did not take care of this agency. What had happened over the last few years was that the agency refocused its work in ways that were had different priorities, I think, than those which are our statutory mandates. And I think my task coming on board was really to reorient our agency back to its statutory mandate. We didn't realize until very recently, very late in the budget process, exactly what that was going to entail. and how much work it was going to put back on our staff to reorient us just to our statutory baseline. When we did that, we immediately reached out to OPB and said, look, we're going to have to ask for something above and beyond this. So I didn't want any of the members to believe that or to have any impression that we were not fully supported by OPB or the governor's office. We've had a lot of support for this work of really reorienting ourselves, but it was not clear how much in terms of money, material, personnel, this reorientation was going to take. And so that's the basis for this workload data. You've seen this once before, so I won't belabor it, but we have over the past 3 years before I took over gradually coped with the inability really, I think, to fully respond to a lot of investigations by beginning to screen out large quantities of our investigations. So you can see that in 2019, again, we screened out 41% of all reports that came to us. In 2020, we screened out 66% of those. And in 2021, in the 6 months before I came on board, we were screening out almost 75% of all the cases that came to us. So one of the first things that I did was stop that process of screening out cases. I reevaluated our screen out procedures, rewrote them basically from the ground up. The result is that now we're screening out fewer than 40% of cases, and I expect that number to continue to drop. What that has meant is a massive increase in the workload of our 4 full-time investigators that we have now. We had a part-time investigator for the first half of 2021, but she left our office for greener pastures. And so we have 4 full-time investigators right now who have an average caseload of 61 cases each, including their backlogs from prior years. So they're very swamped. Our investigators are extremely swamped right now because we have stopped the routine screen outs of cases and refocused on our statutory duty to deal, to take these cases by the horns and to deal with them. We also are involved in child death and serious injury work with DFACs to help diagnose the problems that lead to those tragic cases. And that adds an additional 112 cases that have to be apportioned out between 2 of our investigators. So a very serious situation in terms of our ability to respond to the statutory duty. I've resumed a process of doing county audits in cases where we see complaints coming from one county again and again and again and again, where we focus our investigative resources on that county, pull cases in a sort of statistically random fashion, and try and look and see if we can identify systemic barriers that are keeping that county from having the best outcomes they can have for the children and families they serve. Every time we do that, it adds a load of cases to our current investigator caseload. We have 2 currently pending, and we've got 3 or 4 in the wings that we're ready to pull out and start as soon as we're able to. And so far, just those 2 have added an additional 16 cases to each of our 4 investigators. So they're having a very difficult time keeping up with the work that we're asking them to do. So the request that we make focuses very heavily on that statutory duty to allow us to deploy our resources back into the field, to increase the number of county audits and court contacts. A lot of the issues we deal with also deal with court issues. And having been a judge, I have a good rapport with the other juvenile court judges and with the Council of Juvenile Court Judges, and I'm very comfortable working with them to try and problem solve court-related issues as well, especially working in conjunction with our court improvement program over at the Georgia Supreme Court. We're also communicating our findings and recommendations directly to DFACs and working with them to remedy the problems that we find. And I've already mentioned reducing the number of screen outs. So what we've done really is make a good faith estimate on what we need to in order to reduce our caseload to a manageable caseload. Best practices across the country for ombudsman offices are in the sort of 1 to 30, 1 to 25, or 1 to 30 range. We're about twice that for our investigators right now, and we're adding new cases to them every week. So our budget request is for $380,785 going forward to allow us primarily to fund capacity for additional investigators so that we can restore this important response capacity. We've actually changed outcomes in cases since I took over in the summer. And I've had reports from judges, from CASAs, and from DFACs that our intervention has changed outcomes in cases. And we want to be able to really capitalize on that. A good working relationship we have with DFACs and courts and other stakeholders like CASAs. And we want to be able to restore our response capacity because we're making a difference. A lot of times we really need to deploy our staff into the field. They're going to incur costs for being out in the field, sometimes overnight, sometimes traveling long distances within the state. As I've noted before, we've got to fund our ability to have appropriate case management software, something we've already asked for in our amended budget to allow us to purchase that up front. We're asking for the ability to pay continued costs for that going forward in our long-term budget. And also to contract with experts to affect outcomes. Our statute gives us the authority within our budget allocated by the legislature to contract with experts in a number of fields like psychology and substance abuse and education so that we can bring expert opinion to bear on cases. I know a case in particular I'm working on right now where it appears the judge is really just waiting on some additional expert opinion in order to make a determination. We can provide that when we have sufficient budgetary resources to contract with these very helpful professionals and to provide a sort of outside objective assessment of cases. So I don't want to take a lot of your time because so many of the issues that I brought up in our amended budget request a couple of weeks ago we have in common with our current budget request, but I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone on the committee has for us.
Chairman Maythia, push your button.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bruce, can you explain to me what screen out really means? What does that really mean?
That means that someone has made a complaint. They've called our office or they've sent us a web form or something and they said, hey, we have this problem. And somebody in our office said that problem is not a problem we're going to deal with. So it's basically no action is taken on it at all. And I believe that the only reasons we should screen out a case should be because it doesn't fall within our statutory mandate, right? There's no allegation that that DFACS or another state agency has violated law or policy. Sometimes we get a great example of this, of an appropriate screen out, is sometimes we get initial reports of abuse or neglect. And we're obviously not the frontline response agency, that's DFACS. So we make sure that those complaints we send those ourselves to central intake. So we screen those out because they don't belong here. But that's a very small percentage in my experience of the type of complaints we get. We certainly shouldn't have been screening out, 3/4 of all the cases that we get. That's just not realistic.
So you're really the first line of defense when somebody calls with a complaint, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so
a statutory reason for being. Yes, ma'am.
okay. So my concern, if we screened out 74% in 21 and we had 112 death or serious injuries with only 2 investigators, that's the wrong, I think that's the wrong direction. I'm sure everybody would agree with me there. When we do county audits, I heard you talk about that a little bit, but only 2 county audits in 180 counties in the state. I understand that we don't have a lot of people, but can you talk about that a little bit? And what do they actually look for in those audits?
So those audits are completely discretionary, really, on my part, working in conjunction with my deputy director, Jen Carrera. So what we do is it's just if we see that we're having complaints about coming up again and again about the same county, X county has this problem, they have this problem, rather than just doing each of those investigations discreetly and then making a report to DFACS, what we want to do is find out why we're getting so many reports from a single county. So our senior investigator, Renee Moore, who worked with DFACS for a very long time and has a very deep experience of this, will go in and she'll look and shines the DFACS system at all the cases active in that county at any given time, and she'll pull a wide sort of array of cases at random, making sure that we have representatives from all the different types of cases. So foster care cases and cases where children are placed with relatives without being put in foster care, places where services are being provided with or without court involvement. And then those will be parceled out among our 4 investigators who will look at each one of those cases in depth, identify systemic issues. They'll coordinate those back with our senior investigator and our leadership staff. And then we will make a decision about how we need to approach the state and the county to work on those systemic issues. So right now I've had 2 counties where we've had so many complaints that I felt like we needed to start those county audits. And since we've begun those 2 county audits, we've had 3 more that have come onto our radar. So it's really a matter of waiting for those counties to just meet the criteria that I've set for those county audits, which is the repeated, this is my COVID brain kicking in, I think.
Issues.
Those repeated issues coming up again and again.
Okay, so could some of that be training of the caseworkers themselves, training of the supervisory staff? Is that where a lot of it comes from?
It can well do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the legislature made, in addition to this investigative aspect, also the educational aspect as well for our office. So we do work with other agencies and alone to provide training to everybody that works in our juvenile court system. So yeah, a lot of times we see issues where training needs to happen, or where training needs to be improved or modified in some way. I mean, we don't really see a lot of cases where you have, malfeasant defects workers. What we have, as you've just heard from Cliff, very ably put, is overwhelmed defects workers. You have defects workers with extremely high caseloads who are having difficulty making their response times, making sure that cases don't fall through the cracks. And we're really there to assist defects. I mean, our job is not to pull surprises on defects or anything like that, but to work with them and to increase their capacity.
There you are. You went away for a minute. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have one question also. So you mentioned the 2 audits, which I just wondered, are cases for the investigations, are they taking place entirely across the state, or are they more targeted in certain areas right now?
We have very good representation from across the state. In fact, our 2 busiest counties in terms of child welfare work and foster care population tend to be Fulton and DeKalb. And those are not necessarily the counties from which we get the most complaints. So it's not always necessarily the biggest counties or the busiest counties. It can be, we get a fair proportion from rural counties with low caseloads, at least comparatively low caseloads. And then we get some from the metro area as well. So they don't tend to just fall within 1 or 2 areas. They tend to come from across the state. We're working cases right now in North Georgia, South Georgia, Central Georgia, coast, mountains, urban and rural.
So travel right now and mileage and gasoline costs, is that starting to impact your work as well?
It does. I mean, I've been the only member of my staff who's traveled to do investigations and to watch court, things like that. And I've covered a lot of that just out of pocket because we didn't have a budget for it. We do have a state vehicle available to us that we can use for that, but that's a gasoline budget. This is all included in that. As you know, gas is pretty expensive right now. And for a very small agency like us, we don't want to get to the point where we're having to decide, well, I can't go watch this court hearing and I can't meet with these people because we can't afford to put gas in the car or stay in a hotel if we have to. I don't like to talk about our travel budget because it sounds like we're, taking vacations. It's really about deploying our folks out into the field. And I want to make sure we have the capacity to do that because, as you know, Madam Chair, sometimes a face-to-face conversation is really the best way to have things done. And especially when you're dealing with court proceedings, sometimes it's very difficult to tell without being present exactly what the problems are that are going on there. And we also have the authority to review court files and records. Most of those are not online and they're not available unless someone shows up at the courthouse and physically pulls those files.
Well, thank you for the work you are doing. I don't see any other questions or comments and hope you get to feeling 100% very soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So next, the Council on Aging. Do we have Maureen Kelly, I believe, maybe online?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Great.
Thank you so much. I can, if you wish, start my video. I'm not sure if you're doing that. Yeah, there we go.
That's great. Thank you.
So thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Maureen Kelly, Legislative Chair for the Georgia Council on Aging. We advise the legislature and coordinate COAGE, and its members voted for a budget priority of $10 million in additional funding for home and community-based services, which are the foundational services that help eligible seniors remain in their homes and delay costly institutional services. But what's different this year? Sooner than expected. What does that mean? We come here every year and testify and sound the alarm that the doubling of the older population will be by 2030. However, no one anticipated that the pandemic would linger and prompt so many older adults to look for services earlier than the end of this decade. The pandemic hastened the client growth during this time, and they are all eligible clients. The system pressures. The pandemic caused tremendous pressures on the systems, the aging systems. Local area agencies on aging have seen an increase in calls, but it's not just the number of calls. It's for new and challenging requests to address ongoing physical and mental health problems fueled by the lingering social isolation. The waiting list, they're quoted at 9,600, but there's recent evidence they've climbed again. That's a 37% increase since 2019. And we can't imagine, none of us can imagine being told, oh, you're hungry. Well, you may have to wait until there's a meal route in your area, or you need a ride to the doctor this week, but it may have to be next month. We can't imagine it, and we know we can do better. Thank you for the local match from the House and state match in the amended budget from the governor to draw down the American Relief funding. And yes, to answer your top of mind question, federal relief dollars shored up the system when the virus hit. But Families First, CARES funding, and supplemental relief funding are all due to expire in September. The ARPA funding does not expire until 2024, but that funding is already designated to fill new services and adapt more programs. The AAAs are all telling us that they have 300 to 400 new clients, and these new clients will remain on the rolls or their waiting list even after the pandemic lifts and relief funding ends. This is a new client base that we have to consider because they've arrived at our doorsteps earlier than expected. In addition to relief funding, we must true up the budget to plan for this new base level of clients that are generating numbers that were not expected for another 10 years. We can't lose pace. $10 million will relieve half the current waiting list. And imagine if all 9,600 of those people ended up in nursing home beds, it would cost in excess of $19 million to the state of Georgia. It's a harsh reality. The network is struggling to serve a client base that is most at risk, but also a larger population of older adults who are now aware of and eligible for ongoing home and community-based services. Yet the last state funding increase was in fiscal year 2020. Average costs have risen 17.5%, still approximately 10% of Medicaid nursing home bed costs. And the number of clients has risen for meals by about 30%. This funding is designated to keep seniors in their home and consistently has demonstrated cost-efficient design. Please consider this $10 million request and for this fiscal year budget. It's incumbent upon us because it's the foundation of Georgia's commitment to older adults. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? I am not seeing any, and just thank you for the good work that you do. I'm glad we were able to do a little bit in the amended, and we'll
Thank you.
certainly take a look on this. That is a huge growth, certainly without a doubt, in the number of clients.
Yes, it is. And it's putting a lot of pressure on the system. So anything that you can do to help us true up, we would very much appreciate it. Georgia's seniors appreciate it. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Okay, Next, we have Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. Let's see, I believe, is Chris Wells here? Yeah, great, good. If you'd rather be at the table, wherever you want to be, wherever it's comfortable. Looks like you brought your team. That's great. It's great, Chris.
I did bring Jonathan Buxton, he's our director of administration.
Great. Y'all, we can have y'all at both, if the PowerPoint from the podium in particular.
Gotcha. Okay, is it up? Okay. I am Chris Wells, Executive Director for the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. I've been on the job a little bit over a year and a half, so I'm probably the senior director for some of our human resources agencies from the last meeting. We are administratively attached to DHS, and the slide that you see right now is just encapsulates our 5 budgetary programs and our FY21 expenses and how our budget is broken out by our, again, 5 major programs. Business enterprise programs is our vending. They handle most of our vending in federal properties as well as local visitor centers. Our Department of Administration, as you can see there. Disability adjudication services, that's 100% federally funded. They perform our SSI and SSDI determinations. Our Georgia Industries for the Blind, that's our manufacturing locations in Griffin as well as Bainbridge. Our largest factory is in Bainbridge, where we have approximately 56 individuals that are blind or visually impaired that work through our manufacturing plant. And then our biggest program is vocational rehabilitation services. That includes our Cave Spring Center, as well as our Roosevelt Warm Springs Center, as well as our vocational rehabilitation services, which is most of the program, which is the bulk of the program, bulk of the agency. Our next slide is just basically our total statewide changes that we have. We technically only have one major change, but the slide basically provides information regarding our overall changes. As you can see, the tracking document starts for GVRA on pages 9 and 10. Sorry about that. And so on 9 and 10, as you can see, business enterprise, department admin, and vocational rehabilitation, this summarize again those statewide changes. Those statewide changes comes to approximately $3.7 million. That's sprinkled throughout, again, business enterprise, department admin, and vocational rehabilitation. Our biggest change is actually line 28.24.7, and that's going to be in vocational rehabilitation. As you can see, the caption there reads, provide funds for capital maintenance and repairs in the amount of $4.3 million. As indicated earlier, we do have 2 residential facilities as well as a manufacturing plant. What we've noticed over the last few years is we need to make a steady investment in order to serve more individuals on our residential campuses, as well as provide some more resources where we are performing some manufacturing at GIB Bainbridge as well as Griffin. And so the $4.3 million that you see there, that covers various projects and programs. With it being in the base, there's some opportunities for us to draw down some federal funding to be able to help us with some of the projects. Our next slide is just basically a summary of some of the projects that we would like to undertake over the next couple of years.
Most of the projects itself is designed for expansion related to our transition. And what we mean by expansion is fixing some of the existing facilities where we can't or where we aren't able to serve as many students. And so again, starting last year, first year on the job, we received approximately $4.3 million for a portion of our HVAC repair. And part of our HVAC repair system is we're seeing where we have parts on them dating back to 1980. And so we're trying to replace some of those larger items as well. And as we get through that particular process of infrastructure, we're also trying to, again, invest in the residential campus side to be able to serve more students. This concludes our presentation for FY 2023. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Okay, from the committee, do we have any questions at all? Okay, Chairman
I'm
Mathiak.
gonna pick on you a little bit.
No problem.
Just because I'm from Griffin. Tell me how big our facility is now. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't know.
In
How
terms of
many
the size of the square feet.
people, well, not the building, I know.
So we,
How many people are we serving? Are they serving us? Tell me about that a little bit.
from a VR or just generally from, okay, our vocational rehabilitation services agency, we have approximately 12,000 individuals on the caseload as we speak. That's active cases. Overall, we've served approximately 26,000 individuals to date. One of the biggest increases that we're seeing right now is our PTS cases. And PTS is our pre-employment transition, or these are potentially eligible students. What we've noticed in the pandemic itself is there's been a request or at least a need for our students to, be out of the classroom, experience some of the job coaching, career counseling, and getting them prepared for, for education, and whether it's education or whether it's employment. So what we're actually seeing, and I can be able to provide that data as well, is we're actually serving more students now than we did all of last year. So we're seeing some inroads being made. That's at least one positive sign. Overall, our total number of, like say, individuals served again is down. Last year, we served approximately 32,000. Right now, we're at 26,000. And individuals being served could be individuals that are coming in for a quick job coaching, resume writing. So they may not pop up being a full-fledged client where we're spending a lot of money. It could be just those basic needs to basically get them over that hump.
Right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Great. Let me ask you just a couple things too, Director Wells. So the $5,000 raise,
Yes, ma'am.
what will this do for y'all? Does that help in any way to open any of the closed categories?
Yes, and I apologize. I didn't thank the governor's office and the General Assembly for all the work that you guys have done to help us over the last couple of years related to our infrastructure improvement, related to some of the things that we're seeing come to fruition. I think supply chain issues is also creating some havoc in terms of us being able to answer the bell in a timely manner. But yes, that 5,000, one of the biggest reasons why we had to close priority categories back in January 2021, it was a two-pronged process, is we didn't have enough counselors at that particular time to be able to serve. And part of that was our starting counselors required a master's was only being provided $35,000. If you came in with your CRC, it was $38,000. We started to see, if you look at who we're competing against, our workers' compensation and insurance companies, out the door, an individual with a CRC can earn $75,000. If you look at who we're competing against on the education side, when you look at your T4s and your T5s, which is considered your pay scales, our partners that in our education system can start a teacher out in special education anywhere between 40 and 45. And if they have assistants at the county level, we saw ourselves competing against individuals in the state as well. Will the $5,000 help? But we're also taking mechanisms to be able to address those concerns, not necessarily just to rely on the 5,000, because if you get in that habit of thinking just 5,000 is going to be the key, then you missed the bell there. So part of what we're doing right now is addressing some of the concerns from the inside. We've started looking at a career ladder. part of that adjustment with the 5,000 would be starting our non-CRC counselors at 40 with the ability to move to 42 with their CRC, with the ability with a 5% increase every 2 years. And that's using like that millennial calculation. I'm a millennial. Every 2 years, you're looking at trying to do something new. So we're looking at it from that particular perspective. How we're planning on being able to assist and helping that particular capacity is with the help of Mr. Buxton and Mamta. We looked at the story of basically, let's budget for 180 counselors. We're currently down to approximately 101. And so I think we've made the calculated decision that we would rather have at this point in time 150 field counselors instead of 180. So we do know we're going to have to sacrifice some vacancies to continue to be competitive. And we're willing to do that because, again, would you rather be fully staffed at 150 or holding for 180? And that hasn't been working. We also took the extraordinary step of changing our statewide plan. Part of coming into the agency, our first 6 months, we were actually under federal monitoring. We're still under federal corrective action. And so that was a drinking from a fire hose situation. But what we learned from that particular conversation and working with our federal partners is as you're monitored against your own policies and procedures, we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. Our statewide plan called for us to only be able to hire and have our counselors perform if they had a CRC. And so that was creating some issues. After talking with our federal partners, we're going with the federal guidelines, which basically says a bachelor's in related field. So we recently resubmitted our amendment with our partners in WIOA to make that adjustment. So moving forward, we're going to be able to hire individuals at the bachelor's with experience in social services. We've already placed a couple job announcements. And again, our pool went from easily 10 individuals to 30 to be able to pull from. Because we've made that change, we actually looked at our support positions, individuals that are going out in the field, and we took a cue from our partners at Department of Education and our local school systems, is that our paraprofessional staff that are familiar with working with individuals with disabilities are some of the prime individuals that may only have a high school education. So we looked at jobs that we could lower those standards, and we've done that as well. So our training team that we created 6 months ago, our data analytics team that we created a couple months ago, we also doubled our policy team as well to create some more quality assurance positions. So with that infrastructure being in place, we feel confident that we can look at a different way of doing certain things. And so even in the next couple months, us being able to look at our high school individuals or even our technical college individuals that want to work with individuals with disabilities, they'll actually have an opportunity to help us go into schools, be able to help us work with the school system to be able to perform those 5 key areas associated with potentially eligible students. So that's a long answer to 5,000 will be great, but we're also doing other things to subsidize that to make sure that we can maintain and continue and also serve.
Excellent. That's great. One more question I wanted to ask you. So a little update on the current status of Warm Springs and Cave Spring reopening.
Yes, so we looked at opening, but I think when Omicron, we had a couple instances that occurred on campus. And so we're looking at April of trying to get back to full capacity. I think with the Cave Spring location, we're seeing if we can start the conversation up with the Georgia School for the Deaf to be able to see whether we can get meals brought in. I think if we can get meals brought in, I think that helps us be able to fill those beds. I think Jonathan and the team is currently working on an RFP for us to figure out whether we can get somebody in the cafeteria to be able to serve. So we feel that we're moving in the right direction there. With Roosevelt Warm Springs, we do have a lot of construction that's going on, again, with the help of the subcommittee and what we started last year with making updates to Georgia Hall, as well as the initial phases of the HVAC. Our hope is by April, we'll be up to 118 individuals that we can serve. Right now, seat capacity is 125. And so that is the hope as of right now. We have a plan in place, but we were looking to do that in early March, but we had a couple incidences. And we also had, some staff being out due to the Omicron variant that came through campus.
So with the food service back in Rome again, what What is the challenge there? Is there,
It's-
remind me?
But right now it's capacity. What it is when you only have 50 beds and 50 students, and if you count teachers, 60, it's hard to get someone in there because they don't see that as a profitable opportunity to be able to serve. We have again reached out to our partners at Georgia School for the Deaf. And there may be some opportunities. I believe even before I came on, there is actually some movement to be able to work with them. And from my understanding is this was a direction of the agency, but with COVID-19 conversations kind of went in a different direction. So we're going to start those conversations up to ensure we're still going to move forward with the RFP to see if that's an opportunity. But right now we have parallel tracks to make sure that we can get fully operational on the campus at Cave Spring.
Well, good, good. Let me know if there's anything I can do
Yes, thank
for
you.
you there in that
Thank you.
arena. Yeah. Anyone else? Not seeing any. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your request and for all that y'all are doing
Thank
as
you.
well. Okay, now I believe we are going to go to the sign-up sheet. Hopefully some of you are here, some may be joining on Zoom. We will see as we go forward. So first I have Tommy Storms. Great, great. No wonder I can't find what I'm looking
Hello, everyone. I know some of your faces and some of you are new to me. It's been a while since our organization has been in front of your committee, and we're very honored to be here and to introduce again the American Association of Adapted Sports Programs. We are sort of the counterpart to Georgia High School Association. We are the infrastructure through which our schools and community partners, which include Parks and Rec, are able to interface with one another to offer true athletic sports programs for those with physical disabilities. We serve kids in grades 1 through 12. I just want to talk about where the organization is today. We were defunded because we had people, and this happens in government, who weren't aware that we were the infrastructure. I think they thought that we were the programs. And in 2009, we were all in a horrible place of the economy possibly crashing down around us. And decisions needed to be made, and they needed to be made quickly. So this is not a case of anyone doing anything bad or wrong, but there was a consequence. It was that the legacy, which we are one of the legacies of the 1996 Paralympic Games, was completely defunded in that year. So we went from 9 employees to 2 or 3 employees, lost our building, and the schools also were affected because we were the first domino. The good news is we all came together, and as we do when something is important to our state, to our students, and to our community, we figured it out. We had some fewer programs. We eliminated JV. We just kept some varsity programs. We eliminated some of our sports, which unfortunately meant that our students with physical disabilities who use power chairs had less opportunity, but we figured it out. Staff even took voluntary pay cuts in order to keep the programs going. But today we were at that time 36 programs, almost 600 students. We had achieved the first wheelchair basketball state tournament at a high school level in the country. There are now still only 2, and we are televised every year over the National Federation of State High Schools network. We're considered the premier organization and the prototype for what is possible. And this is what the federal government and the Paralympic Committee and all of us in our wisdom here in the legislature wanted out of the games, was how do we affect these sometimes horrible maladies that plague our children, especially with physical disabilities. Twice as likely to drop out of school, twice as likely to become a pregnant teen, twice as likely to suffer depression, suicidal thoughts, or even suicidal attempts, and graduation rates that were dismal. I can tell you as I sit here today, and I want to introduce my colleagues, our overall graduation rate is around 88% now for these students, which is really extraordinary. Christy Jones is here. She represents the Houston County program. It is our largest program, and she has built the most successful community network and really is a prime example of what we try in communities. Her school board is involved. The local military base is involved. Her kids are involved. Families are involved. The media are involved. They come out and do a scrimmage game, but I'll let Christy talk more about that and the tremendous benefits to these kids. And I have Dr. Deb Shapiro with me. She has been a longtime board member, but she is a researcher in this area. She's a former head of the Adapted Physical Activity Council of AFRD, which is now called SHAPE, but we're very proud to have her. But I will say this, while we're proud to come to you and tell you that we are doing tremendous work still, that we have begun to get back on our feet, though it has taken some time, no one really questions why you have a football team at the school or why you have gymnastics. And any of you who are a parent know it's that first opportunity to put on a uniform, feel like you belong, be a part of a team, represent your school and your community. These are many of the things that these kids would not have without these programs. I will retire within the next 3 years, and our other co-founder has already retired, Bev Vaughn, a real visionary for these programs. As I leave, I would like to leave this organization in competent hands, and I believe we will with Christy Jones's leadership, and I do expect her to be stepping up behind me, and with a budget that reflects the true needs here in Georgia. We estimate there are about 2,600 students who are eligible for this program. About 60% of them will want to do sports. Some of them are going to want to do art and other things. And we are only serving a few hundred of them right now. We can do so much better if we can meet the needs of our schools. And I thank you for your support and consideration today and possibly having that happen. And with that, I'll introduce Dr. Shapiro of Georgia State.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a full professor at Georgia State in the Department of Kinesiology and Health in the College of Education and Human Development. I wear 3 hats, as most faculty do, a teaching hat, service hat, and a research hat. My teaching hat really has focused on the development and training of students in the Department of Kinesiology to work with individuals with disabilities in sport and recreation settings. And to do that, we've created one of the only programs, sport coaching programs in the state that has integrated classes that are required for all students on coaching athletes with disabilities. There are several other coaching programs in the state, but none have infused disability the way we have at Georgia State. And that's because we understand that we want all our kids, whether through the public schools or campus recreation. Sorry, I apologize. Yeah, so we've integrated our disability sport programming into our curriculum at the undergraduate level so that our students, when they graduate, are competent and knowledgeable about how to coach, how to work with individuals with disabilities in their communities, whether it's through the school systems or through Parks and Recreation or private clubs and summer camp programs. The other hat that I wear is the service hat, and that's where my involvement with ASP has been for over 20 years. I have been involved with ASP. I've been on faculty for 23 years now. So since the very beginning of my time in Georgia State, I have been involved with ASP and I've seen them grow. And one of the key factors of that growth early on when I first started was support and funding for programs. Programs are looking for that funding, for that dollar match to say, listen, if you can give us something, we can match it. And they build those programs with some of that funding. And ASP has been very successful in doing that in the early days. And then with the cut in the budgets, that was a problem. And so what we know is that there are many programs in states, counties around the state that don't have programs that really should have these programs. Cobb County is one of those big school districts that doesn't have a program. Gwinnett County has one, but could certainly have more. Rural counties where Christy comes from, they partner with other counties around them to build the infrastructure so that there's no excuses to say that there's not enough students with disabilities to play our sports. The other hat that I wear is the research hat. And that's where I'm really here to share with you some of the research that I've done specifically on these athletes, to be able to understand what is the psychological, the health, the academic and the emotional benefits of participation in sport. And so I published these findings I'm going to share with you today in scholarly peer-reviewed journals, so they have been peer-reviewed. And some of the research that I have found personally and that is supported nationally and internationally is that the participants in ASP have positive perceptions of their health-related quality of life across the physical, emotional, social, and school functioning domains. That these athletes have higher levels of positive well-being that are associated with lower levels of psychological distress, fatigue, fear, shame, and loneliness. And as Tommy said, this is critical given the higher rates of bullying, social rejection, and depression experienced by youth with disabilities. The participation in ASP particularly has remediated the mental health concerns of many of these young individuals' disabilities. Participants have also said that they have higher perceptions of their physical and athletic competence, athletic identity, and close friendships, and that they're happier, well-adjusted, and attract others to them, reducing the risk of social failure and adjustment. Participants have viewed the involvement in sport as an important outlet for their social expression, and also perceive that others fail to view them as athletes the same way they view themselves. There's a high positive pleasure and engagement from participation in these sports. Athletes report that the sport allows an opportunity to be social, active, aggressive, express their aggression in socially acceptable manner, and experience pride, happiness, and excitement. Also, the opportunity to participate in ASP programming has been found to sustain moderate levels of moderate vigorous physical activity that is recommended by the CDC and the American College of Sports Medicine, showing that wheelchair sports can serve as recommended evidence-based best practices for intervention to improve cardiovascular fitness, strength, improved wheelchair propulsion and efficiency, improved ability to complete everyday tasks, decrease levels of body fatness, improve cognitive skills, and life satisfaction. So through ASP programming, we see that wheelchair sport programming can serve as a recreation, rehabilitation, or post-rehabilitation option that can benefit students physically, socially, emotionally, and increase their quality of life, life satisfaction, and overall well-being. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, does it work?
Thank you for having us today. I just wanted to tell you about working with kids that I work with and tell you how much it has helped our community, how much it has helped the parents that are involved in our program, and how much it has helped the kids and the teachers even to understand that when you see someone with a physical disability, it doesn't limit them. When you talk to the parents that are involved in our program now, when they first come in, they talk about, oh, well, he's doing this and and when he was born, he's had this many challenges. Now, when you talk to my parents, they're saying, hey, we won 24 state championships in the past 14 years. And just that pride. And then you start talking to our athletes, and the biggest thing is they're being seen by their peers, they're being seen by their teachers as an athlete, and they're being recognized in their schools. You know, when a long time ago, when I was in high school and when they did the announcements in the mornings, you know, it was awesome to hear your name called out. Hey, you scored so many points. That's what happens with our kids. We send write-ups to each high school. In my school system, we have 5 high schools, 9 middle schools, and roughly 30 elementary primary schools. And they're coming from all over the county. We send out printouts of everything they do over the weekend, and they're read every morning. So, you know, our guys are sitting there with their chest puffed out and everybody's walking by giving them high fives. And this just brings so much confidence and independence. You can see that in their eyes as they start working in these programs. And I can't brag enough about the program ASP coming into my life period, and into our kids and what it's brought to our community overall.
This program was able to get off the ground because of inception programs that were funded by the state, where school systems or parks and rec can come forward, establish their need, and then have us come in behind them, purchase the equipment that they need, offer the training at no cost to the school system or Parks and Rec. We also identify, train all of the referees across the state. And again, we are the infrastructure. So it makes it affordable, easy for us to do the same thing with kids without disabilities as our other children enjoy on a regular basis. So we do hope that you will we open it up for questions, and we hope that you will support our request for funding. We have a couple of employees who have been with us the entire 25 years who have no retirement. We'd like to, at minimum, take our own unrestricted funds if we can shore up our budget. And in this first year or two, do what are called windfall catch-ups to provide something for those employees who took salary cuts and stayed with us all those years. And then within the next year from this funding, by that time to have identified an operations director to bring us back to a semi-full operational place so that we can meet the needs of Georgia students and our schools and our parks and recreation departments and partners like Warm Springs, and also serving many of their students. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. We have your request and information, I believe. Just for the purpose of anyone who might be listening in, the acronym ASP, I want you to tell us what it stands for so that we all know.
It
that.
is the American Association of Adapted Sports Programs. We can be found at adapted with an ED, adaptedsports.org on the web. And you'll find 2-minute videos right now of our Aspire Awards where coaches, parents, referees, educators, superintendents, Georgia high school leadership, and others briefly tell you, but rather emotionally, how this program has changed their lives. So I hope that you'll go to our website, and thank you for letting me clarify that.
Oh, thank you. I do not see any questions. Thank you for the great work you are doing with as many as you can.
Thank
Appreciate you.
Thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you. So next we have Chris Brandy, I believe, from FODAC.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and committee, for the opportunity to share today. And thank you so much for the past support from the state budget for some of our programs and work. If you're not familiar with FODAC, Friends of Disabled Adults and Children, has been around 36 years right here in DeKalb County. But we've continued to grow and serve anyone that comes to our doors from all over the state. We've actually created a conduit and a footprint around the state of delivering home medical equipment to people in need. And that's durable medical equipment, DME, HME, they're kind of interchangeable. But the primary items we're getting requests for and filling are manual and power wheelchairs, standers, strollers, corners, gait trainers for children. Then you have shower supports, canes, walkers, Hoyer lifts, and hospital beds for seniors. So Maureen, Kelly, and these fine folks from Adaptive Sports, you know, the foster care system, we help Voc Rehab, we help everyone over these past 36 years. And we continue to grow about a $2.2 million budget, help 92 counties in Georgia every year. And with 34 employees, it's really a lot. A 65,000 square foot best practice facility in the country over here in Stone Mountain, the edge of Tucker. And we're really proud of the unique work we do. We're the biggest in Georgia, of course, so much so that we partner with Centers for Independent Living and area agencies on aging all over the state to deliver to them requests that they've given us. So every quarter we're doing that now, and we have a plan to do more in COVID. We've been talking to them. How can we help them support their needs? And we really want to put a base in Savannah so that we can help the Waycross and areas that we're serving already. So the statewide partners we help include Waycross. We have Oakwood, Athens, Augusta, Columbia. Well, that's Columbia, South Carolina, Columbus, Georgia, Dalton, Darien, Franklin, Rome, Savannah. So it's a huge network that we've been able to grow and continue to do more, but we never have enough equipment to meet the demands. You know, we're happy to get 20 or 30 items to those locations on a quarterly basis, but they'd like us to come monthly. And we'd like to come monthly, but the cost for trucks that we own and operate and the manpower that it takes to do what we do is a huge, heavy lift. And that's why it's not replicated in every major city as we'd love to see in the US. But But some of our other programs, just as a wraparound about what we do have a vehicle modification facility at our main campus there in Stone Mountain. We do home modifications. We're contracted to do all the nursing home transitions for Area Agency on Aging in Atlanta. So we help with all those home modifications and temporary equipment that they need to get people out of nursing homes and to be independent, because that's our goal, is to keep people in that continuum of care, keeping them independent and maximizing everything they need to do in life. And that's, witnessed today by the many comments. We helped in COVID. We've always had medical supplies in our pipeline and oxygen equipment, and we didn't know how valuable that was until COVID happened. And GEMA, Georgia Emergency Management, backed up a trailer and loaded ventilators and concentrators and new hospital beds and loaded up about $1 million worth of equipment out the door. And in addition to FEMA work that we do, we work very closely with Georgia VOAD, Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster, and have done that since 2013 probably. And so we've been expanding staff to do more in that realm. We've added an international and disaster relief coordinator, and they're local first. A fire happens in Macon and Red Cross calls us with a scooter burned and there's no resources. We're going to try to get that down there. A baby needs a nebulizer, happens to be in Louisiana, happens here in Georgia all the time. And we're going to be there and try to help. Just top of mind there. But, we're really excited about the plans we have and the business and program development person that we've added and our board members in Savannah, to get more done with our partnerships with Rotary, with the Community Association of Hospitals in Georgia. I think we can really wrap them around our partners to get more collected and stay local. We're not trying to pull all equipment out of those areas. We have plans that we can replicate in ways what we know how to do, how to make this work in those cities that I just listed. So we're really looking at just expanding that footprint, and we'd love for your consideration on those plans. One other side note, we are taking over a nonprofit that's closing, Credit Able, the CFII is kind of closing their doors. They're dissolving. We're just going through a long process of getting that alternative financing program under our belt as a program, access for people with low income, with poor credit, to be able to get access to lower floor minivans, all the things for mobility that they might not be able to get from us, and the parents who have to pay out of pocket for equipment that we might not have in our pipeline. So we're really thrilled with our work and really appreciate the support from this committee, and would appreciate the consider of this modest appropriations. Thank you.
Thank you so
questions?
much. Are there any questions or comments? Not seeing any. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next, Jody Stevens, maybe Rebecca Richards too from PACE. I don't know if y'all are doing together, and is someone else joining you too, or just on Zoom? Jody's on Zoom. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to kick us off. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Dempsey, Vice Chair Kirby, and committee members. Thank you so much for giving us the honor of speaking with you today. I'm Jody Stevens, the Director of Government Affairs for PACE Center for Girls. I apologize for not being there in person today. I made plans to be there and then woke up with a sick 3-year-old at about 3 a.m. this morning. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to join you via Zoom. I know I've met almost all of you, and I'm excited to speak with you today about PACE as you put together your budget. I'm going to give a very brief overview of the program, because I know many of you have heard from me before, but I really like you to hear today from our PACE Reach program manager, Rebecca Richards, and one of our incredible PACE Macon alumni, both of whom are there in person. So PACE Center for Girls provides prevention, early intervention, and wraparound social services to middle and high school age girls at risk of justice involvement, school dropout, and other things that you don't want your adolescent girls to be at risk of. Many of our PACE girls deal with significant trauma in their lives, as well as mental and sometimes physical health challenges, and other adverse childhood experiences. So PACE is really focused on addressing these underlying risk factors that compound and marginalize our girls. PACE provides counseling and therapy to girls, and we also work with the girls' families. We're statewide in Florida, and in the last 1.5 years, we've expanded to Georgia and South Carolina. In our program in Bibb, Peach, and Crawford counties, we see girls in the schools, and we've also seen girls in the Regional Youth Detention Center through our diversion program. So funding from the state would really help expand these services and reduce our wait list. We're thrilled to be here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Richards, who's there in person, our PACE Reach program manager, to introduce herself and our fabulous alumni.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Dempsey and the committee members. My name is Rebecca Richard. I am a licensed clinical social worker and the Reach Manager for the PACE Center for Girls. I am here to answer any boots on the ground questions you might have and to tell you a little bit about our program. Currently, this past year, we've served 60 girls in Bibb, Peach, and Crawford County in 8 different schools throughout the area. Girls are referred to PACE by guidance counselors, administrators at school, the DA's office, public defender's office, for reasons such as a fray, which is fighting in schools, academic underachievement, family instability, criminal behavior, and traumatic events. To give you a picture of this risk factors that girls experience coming in, 72% state that they have physical and mental risk factors. 93% have behavior risk factors, 88% have school risk factors, and 100% of them have family instability factors. Now, we provide free weekly therapy to these girls and their families. And when a girl is transitioned out, we do pre and post tests. And the outcomes are really, really wonderful. And I'll share some of those with you. 89% say their family relationships have improved. 89% say peer relationships have improved. 89% say mental health has improved, as well as substance abuse, and their school relationships have improved 44%. Their physical health, they say 44%, but I think I blame TikTok and COVID for that. That's fair to say. Yes. So this funding that we're requesting will hopefully hire additional therapists to tackle our wait lists and expand our reach to have designated therapists at additional schools and the middle school, a feeder zone. So a middle school and high school will have the same therapist. So I wanted to pass it off to my very first PACE girl on my care load, Olivia Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Olivia Johnson, and I became a PACE girl in the summer of 2020 after my mentor recommended that I speak to someone about some of the struggles that I was facing. In January of that same year, my parents and I were evicted out of our 2-bedroom home. Every single one of our belongings was thrown out into the street, and people came by and stole our TV, my laptop and printer that was gifted to me for school, and almost every item of clothing I owned, including my dirty clothes basket. The eviction hit me a lot harder than it hit my parents, and most of the items that were taken from me, I had just got. It was a struggle to get them, and people's generosity helped me get it. So from that day on, I was flooded with many emotions. I felt guilty because, of course, this overachieving 16-year-old could have done something to prevent that situation. I felt insecure as the plus-size girl who had just got herself together fashion-wise had to completely start over. And I felt angry because now I would be forced to live in a 4-bedroom house with 10 people, most of whom don't value privacy, cleanliness, or good priorities. Now, I love my family, don't get me wrong, but boy, does something bother me about being the only level-headed person in the household. So to keep my head leveled, I met with Rebecca. During our time, I learned many things. I learned things about myself, like how everyone in my house could depend on me, but at that time, I could only depend on myself. I learned the value of self-care, and we called that being an Olivia to Olivia. My favorite, I learned the importance of bundling, and we practice this often with our weekly sections, combining the sessions with walking around for exercise. Rebecca helped me learn my worth and how to give myself the credit that I deserve. She helped me to reframe my circumstances and find the positive in every situation. She enforced my determination to never give up with her encouraging words and sayings. And most importantly, she taught me that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And I made sure to respond every day positively by only focusing on what I can control. My transition to college was interesting and long overdue because I was ready to get out of the house, but it was long overdue. And being in a new environment was definitely beneficial to my mental health. And in the transition, I thought that I would need to use some of the life skills that I learned with PACE a little bit less because obviously I was in a new environment, but I was mistaken because now I know that I need to prioritize myself and my mental health even more on this path of self-discovery. I attend the Fort Valley State University, participating in CDEP's dual degree program where I will major in math and then move to another school and pursue a degree in engineering. On campus, I'm a member of Minorities with Power. I'm a campaign manager for the XGA Executive Board, and I'm starting a new business where I'm doing acrylic nails. So I'm obviously looking for more ways to get involved on campus. Balancing schoolwork, meetings, clients, friends, and other responsibilities, the stress tries to overcome me, but I know that I can't let it. I am the most resilient person I know, and because of PACE, I can recognize that. I would like to thank PACE for being a fantastic organization that helps young girls like me get the support that they need. There was a need and they really stepped up. Additionally, I would like to genuinely thank you, Rebecca, because you've been amazing, thoughtful, and always non-judgmental. Even when you keep me in line, it was never harsh. And I'm filled with joy every time you say that you're proud of me. You've been a consistent beacon of light, and I love you for that. And I know you wear many hats, but for me, you were a therapist, confidant, and mentor. I'm sorry. But I also consider you as one of my dearest friends. We need more people in the world like you. Thank you all for listening.
Oh, I forgot to mention, in your folder, you'll find a letter of support from the Macon Bib delegation as well. And I'm happy to provide letters of support from the school district and the district attorney's office.
Thank you. What a lovely story. Everyone's kind of teary in here right now.
I'm
All of
sorry.
us, but that was so sweet. We're so happy that y'all found each other. That is truly so awesome. What a wonderful story. And you told it so well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Representative Anulowicz.
Thank you. I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to commend you for coming down here today and sharing your story. It's not easy to come to this building. It's very daunting, and you did a beautiful job. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Mathiak.
Incredible. Thank you. I forgot the young lady's name on the video.
Jody.
Jody, thank you. When she came to visit me to tell me about PACE, all I could think of is, wow, you guys are heavy mentors. And it's very obvious that you're heart mentors too. But the one thing I want to ask you, through the PACE program, it sounds like they gave you some tools for your toolbox to endure freshmanship. And when you go off to college, that's one of the biggest things as parents. I'll bet everybody in here that has a freshman knows the challenges of being away from home, being on their own, time management, and some of the things that you talked about. I'm very proud of you. And it sounds like I want to encourage us to put some money into PACE because of what I heard. And I'm like Representative Anulowicz, awesome job to come here and be able to be the adult in the room. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And PACE has done a great job. Y'all have worked hard to make sure we know your story now, but over the years as well. So we've watched the success and the growth that you've had. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for the work y'all are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Sheila Humberstone. I think I saw her outside. If you see her right there, if not, well, yeah, there she is.
Good afternoon. Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sheila Humberstone with Stonebridge Consulting. I'm here today to talk to you about Georgia MemoryNet. It is embedded in the budget as the Georgia Alzheimer's Project. I'm pretty blunt, so I'm going to be blunt and relatively quick today. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and then the reason for optimism. So the good, in 2017, y'all generously funded a program at the time called the Georgia Alzheimer's Project, has hence been renamed to Georgia MemoryNet, to establish 5 memory assessment clinics in the state. The reason for that, and that's the bad, is that Georgia is among the most impacted states negatively in terms of Alzheimer's rates. Alzheimer's is expected to rise a shocking 46%. Perhaps most shockingly, Georgia Public Health has done some research and they've determined that as many as 385,000 Georgians reported feeling that they were cognitively impaired, but 80% of them had not talked to their doctor about it. And I'll get to why that's important in just a minute. But there is reason for us to be optimistic. In 2021, the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation published a great report that I can leave copies of that as well if you like it. The clinical trials report that there are 208 active clinical trials for Alzheimer's disease, 28 in phase 1, which is the earliest stage, 72 in phase 2, and 19 in phase 3. What is most exciting to me is in 2021, offered the first disease modifying treatment that we have seen in 17 years. For those of you that know me, my mom was diagnosed 17 years ago. So she was on that drug and she's been gone. She had the disease for 8 years and she's been gone for 10 years. She's passed away. So it has been the entire length of her journey that we have not had any meaningful treatments for this disease. So this is fantastic news, right? We've got a medication that works. The challenge is this drug and the other drugs that are going to come to market relatively soon, we don't think are going to undo the damage that Alzheimer's causes. And so I go back to that 385,000 Georgians who reported that they have some form of cognitive impairment, but haven't talked to their doctor about it. We have to get folks in to get an assessment, to get a specific diagnosis, because those medications are not going to work if they're given too late. They're not going to work if they don't know that they're available. And so that's the reason 5 years ago, we funded Georgia MemoryNet, was to create that network of healthcare services that will specialize not only in early and accurate diagnosis, but then when those medications come to market, making sure that the physicians and clinicians are trained in deploying that medication. And then among the most important thing is connecting those families with social services, because it's overwhelming taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's. So why have I launched into all this? Again, if you don't know you have it, you can't get a drug for it. And so I come here today saying, I think it's time that we expand our existing Georgia MemoryNet and add an additional $3 million a year to grow this program, to add an additional 2 bricks and mortar sites and 1 robust telemedicine site. In addition, this is going to provide funding to increase our capacity at all of our other existing sites. If you've watched the news like I do at night, for a while there, it seemed like almost every night they were talking about Biogen's drug or a new test for Alzheimer's, et cetera. That's great. And that means more people are going to seek out a service to get a diagnosis. And so because it's a long disease, we take care of these folks over many years. And so they don't come off of our rolls very quickly. And so we want to be able to continue monitoring the folks that we diagnosed 2, 3, 4 years ago, but we also need to have the capacity to make sure that we can diagnose the next chunk of individuals. So that's the ask and that's the optimism in terms of where we're going and how we can meet the need here. What's exciting to me is that Georgia is leading in this space. That's not something that we can often say in Health and Human Services, but we have had many other states reach out to Georgia and ask, gosh, how are you doing this? We want to replicate what Georgia's doing. And to me, as a public health person, that's incredibly exciting. The state has also been able to draw down federal funds because of this project. It frankly makes us very competitive when we go and compete for other National Institutes of Health or HRSA funding opportunities. And so part of Georgia's public health bold grant that they got from the federal government, that grant application was made better because of the existence of Georgia MemoryNet, and Emory was able to draw down funds from a federal HRSA geriatrics program. Again, they may not have received that funding if it hadn't been for the seed money that we put in this committee years ago. And then finally, I'm going to geek out on you for a minute because I'm really excited about this. But just about 2 weeks ago, I think I texted some of you, the Journal of American Geriatric Society did an evaluation of our program and reported it. So this is a national journal that's talking about the really unique and good work that this program is doing. And I'm not going to read you the whole thing because I don't believe in that, but I'm going to just give you a snippet for the record, if nothing else. Georgia MemoryNet is a novel care model for Georgians and their families living with Alzheimer's and related dementias. The project demonstrated how a state plan to address the rising prevalence of ADRD, Alzheimer's and related dementias, coupled with a vision and expertise from an academic medical center and state leadership, that's y'all, led to the creation of a unique hub and spoke model. This model is recognized in national forums and could revolutionize the standard of care for the growing population with Alzheimer's and related dementias. Expected short-term advantages of Georgia MemoryNet include timely and accurate diagnoses for patients and families, increased primary care doctor awareness and knowledge, and reduced hospitalizations and potential cost savings to the state, not to mention the human factor. So I appreciate your time. Again, we're asking for $3 million to expand this program in the budget. It may come up as the Georgia Alzheimer's Project because that's what I named it originally, but it's Georgia MemoryNet now. And I thank you for your attention and I thank you for your support and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee?
And I will say the documents that I've left, I left you a copy of the study if you want to read the journal article, and then I left you my sort of one pager and then the foundational information about the program as a whole. So you should have everything you need about us.
You've done an excellent job. You're an incredible advocate.
Well, it's my passion for sure. It won't help my mom, but it's going to help somebody's mom.
That is so wonderful. And it's touched so many people and so many families that are represented here at the Capitol.
And I would be remiss if I didn't go ahead and say that the Alzheimer's Association has or will be speaking to you about a requested line item to support dementia care specialists. And we wholeheartedly support that line item as well.
Great. Chairman Mathiak.
Just one question.
Sure.
Can you talk about the meds a little bit? That slows it down, slows the degeneration down, or
so
what's it actually doing?
So there's a lot in the pipeline. I am no scientist. And so I'm going to give you the Sheila Humberstone, really layman's version of what the the medications have sort of been able to do now. If there's scientists, and I'm sure Emory's going to cringe when they know that I'm about to talk about scientific stuff. But what I like to say is the medications that we've had available so far, if you think about when you learned in science that you've got sort of an axon and a neuron and the dendrites and the neurotransmitters, right? And that's how your brain cells talk to one another. And when you form these, whether they're beta amyloid plaques or tail proteins, there's something that blocks that communication. And so for a while in the disease, some of the medications will help sort of motivate those neurotransmitters to find new ways to communicate around those plaques. But as the plaques continue to grow throughout the brain, there's nowhere for those neurotransmitters to go. You're just out of options. And so I think that's part of the issue. There's schools of thought as to whether it's the tau proteins that cause Alzheimer's or the beta amyloid. But I think there's a real consensus that they don't know that they're going to be able to restore the brain once it's been damaged. And so that's the need for those early accurate diagnosis. Right now, if people don't get diagnosed till the middle stages, they're not going to have the benefit of those medications.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You did great.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any others, but just thank you for your passion.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all.
We appreciate you. So the next 4 names may be together or y'all may be doing separately. I'm not sure. Sally Buchanan, Claire Wood, Tanya Anderson and Allison Evan. However y'all wish to tell your wonderful stories. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Chairman Dempsey and members of the committee, we're going to go separately, but we're going to be very precise and very quick and kind of add to one another, if that's okay. My name is Sally Buchanan, and currently I am the chair of Together Georgia, and I'm also the CEO for Creative Community Services, which, whoa, okay. And I, which is located in Norcross. The majority of the members of Together Georgia are private nonprofits like my agency, which is a child placing agency. Creative Community Services was the first therapeutic foster care agency that served the state's foster care children that have mental and behavioral health challenges. I want to thank you today for the opportunity to lift my voice in support of line 2813-1, the out-of-home care program of the tracking document. The governor's proposed 10% provider rate reimbursement increase for child caring institutions, child placing agencies, foster parents, and relative caregivers. This increase is a huge step forward, and I ask that you support this increase so that we may continue to serve Georgia's most vulnerable children and their families. Our last increase was for 2.5% in 2018, and it was made in the FY 2019 budget. We can't sustain providing our services and our programs without needed adjustments to our rates. My fellow providers and I have seen huge increases in basic cost, such as insurance, food, gasoline expenses. We've also been hit by the staffing issues, much like the state and other businesses. Our rates also do not support what it costs my agency and other agencies to recruit and train foster parents. And I know that you heard from Cliff when he discussed the need for foster care and foster parents. This increase, which is only a partial step forward towards meeting the actual cost, will help us with all of these categories and challenges. So please support this much needed rate increase, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Claire Wood. I'm the Deputy Director of Together Georgia. We are a statewide association of child welfare providers. Many of you are familiar with our association. We have 75 members across the state. We are everywhere from Dalton to Savannah to Davisboro, as Representative Dempsey and some members of your committee know, Waleska. We are everywhere, and we are serving Georgia's children. I'm standing in this afternoon for our Executive Director, Juanita Stedman. She's out of town and sorry that she is unable to be here with you today. Together Georgia members are grateful for the governor and the First Lady's inclusion of the 10% provider rate increase. Again, page 8, line 28.13.1 of your tracking document in the amount of $27 million or $27.8 million for child caring institutions, child placing agencies, foster parents, and relative caregivers. Our members provide a continuum of services to Georgia's children and families, ranging from protecting the most severe children in need to preventing children and families from entering the system in the first place. This increase is much needed for our providers to continue to provide these quality services and programs to our most vulnerable children. So we respectfully request that you support the 10% provider rate increase at page 8, on page 8, line 28.13.1. We appreciate your consideration of this request to help take the step forward to increase our reimbursement rates and help our members meet those rising costs in providing care. Additionally, we just found out about this yesterday, but we are asking that the committee consider the 35% reduction in funding that CSEC providers, including Together Georgia member Wellspring Living, is taking due to reductions in the Georgia's Victim of Crime Act formula assistance. These providers serve children and youth who have been victims of sex trafficking and other forms of unspeakable abuse that we just can't even imagine. These reductions are from federal funding, but many states are choosing to use their CARES money and those sorts of funding sources to fill the gap. So any help that we can give to replace this much needed funding for these CSEC providers will be greatly appreciated. I am glad to provide additional information to Amber and the committee afterwards, as well as Mary Frances Foley, who is with Wellspring Living. So thank you again for supporting our providers and for letting us speak with you today.
Thank you.
And good afternoon. I am Tanya Anderson, and I'm the Executive Director for Youth Villages Georgia. Youth Villages is a national organization that's nonprofit, and we've been in service for 35 years. We're currently serving in 24 states across the nation. Here in Georgia, we operate residential services and then 2 community-based models. One is called Intercept, the second one is called LifeSet. Our residential campus in Douglasville, Georgia, serves some of the most challenging youth who are experiencing mental health, emotional health, and behavioral health instabilities. And we are one of 6 psychiatric residential treatment facilities in the state. While Youth Villages does not operate child placing agencies or child caring institutions here in Georgia, I do want to be clear and strongly emphasize my support for the governor's 10% increase in provider rates for those agencies who do operate these service lines like Sally and Allison and many others. These funds are so important as outlined in the Department of Human Services budget in the amount of $27.8 million for out-of-home programs. This much needed rate increase is vital to both stability for today and sustainability for the future as it relates to the continuum of services that we need to offer children and their families here in the state. It's not a secret that most agencies who provide mental health and other therapeutic services to children and families are experiencing some pretty significant challenges. Some challenges include workforce issues such as recruiting and retaining quality staff, and other rising costs similar to what Sally has already shared with you. This 10% increase is greatly needed and has been needed for some time. I do ask on behalf of the providers who operate child placing agencies and child caring institutions, as well as the youth who are in need of these services, that the committee also supports this increase. It's so important to ensure that I and others who operate higher levels of care, such as Youth Villages, have other agencies to partner with, like Creative Community Solutions and the Methodist Home and Twin Cedars and Georgia Baptist and Kids Peace and Murphy Harps and Goshen Valley to be able to coordinate services with them and step children down from higher levels of care who have really done a good job to become safer and better prepared to transition into the community. This is really about investing in our children and their future by sustaining these services. So thank you again for your time to speak. And if you have any questions for me, I'm more than willing to answer them.
I don't see any questions. Thank you so much. All right, Allison Evan.
Well, I don't know if y'all heard it all the way up here, but the whoop that came out of us down in Macon when the governor included Children's Services Agency in his budget was incredible. We are so thankful that he has finally recognized our needs, heard our cry for help, and responded. We are grateful for Commissioner Brose, who's on the phone 2 to 3 times a week with Juanita Stedman of Together Georgia to hear and understand the needs of the providers. And we are so thankful to you and your committee for coming out and visiting with us and seeing firsthand the work that we're doing for children across Georgia. You know, my colleagues have talked about the budget lines, and yes, we want, 28.13, 1 through 3. Mark them big, keep them in there. Please do all you can. But let's talk for a moment about the why. And I just want to give you 2 quick stories, 2 Christmas stories. Somebody asked earlier about adoption. Little girl, 8 years old, put on her Christmas list this year. She wanted to be adopted. And 2 weeks before Christmas, through Hope Foster Care, she and her 5 siblings got in a limousine and rode down to the courthouse down in Muskogee County and got adopted. That's a family made at Christmas that turns my heart, warms my heart, because we were a part of creating permanency, not only for that young lady, but for all of her siblings. That's the work that the Together Georgia providers do every single day. And we couldn't do it without your help and support. And the other example happened to me, and it was the day after Christmas. Now I know a lot of Georgia Bulldog fans think that Kirby Smart and that big red sled brought their Christmas present home, you know, a couple of weeks after Christmas. But for me, my Christmas present came the day after Christmas. Commissioner Dempsey, I sat in the 4th row at Vineville United Methodist Church. You know that church well. And I felt a presence over my shoulder. And it was a strong presence. And I turned and I looked. And the first thing I saw off that pew was a bright, shiny belt buckle and a big white belt and a blue coat with red piping and brass buttons that led all the way up to the face of a crisp young Marine. And he said, Miss Allison, I knew I'd find you in church on Sunday. I just wanted to come back and tell you thank you. Thank you for never giving up on me. Now, James was a kid who lived with us for about 2 years, and the number of things that he tried and failed at is pretty long. And being a teenager, he tried some teenage behaviors that nearly cost us a bathroom because he was smoking in it. But we never gave up on James. We stayed with him when he went off to college and he didn't do well. And he called me one day and said, I need some help. And I drove halfway here to Atlanta to pick him up. And his answer to me at that point was, Miss Allison, just take me to a homeless shelter. James, we're not giving up on you. We're going to stick with you. And there's no greater feeling than that day after Christmas when that kid comes back and says, thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the committee members?
I don't see any, but just thank you for the work that each of you are doing. We loved our tour this summer, those of us that could go to different ones, and always when we've been there at the Methodist home earlier too. Thank y'all. It's a daily, constant, big lift. Appreciate you.
Well, God bless you for helping us help them.
Okay, next. I'm not sure I can read this name, but Dawn Randolph, maybe you can help me. It just maybe Caitlin. Okay, great. Yes. Okay, good. Oh, great. No, your handwriting is fine. It's my eyes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and the committee members for allowing me to speak today. I am Caitlin Hyatt, Chief Executive Officer of Georgia Association of Training and Employment Supports, or GATES. GATES is a statewide organization representing 11 CARF-accredited community rehabilitation providers, or CRPs. These nonprofit CRPs provide a full service spectrum of services to people with disabilities and other barriers to employment throughout Georgia. A natural partner to the GATES member organization is Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. Each of our members has a contract with GVRA to provide critical services to individuals with disabilities with the goal of independence in employment. This partnership worked best when there was a dedicated line item in the budget for vocational rehabilitation facilities. Up until 2012, our members' abilities to access funds via a referral process were tied to a line item which clearly outlined the ways in which the funds could be used to provide services. Since 2012, and not just as a result of the pandemic, CRPs have been faced with underutilized and reduced contracts as a result of diminishing referrals from GVRA. These challenges create issues with allocating resources, maintaining staff, and therefore producing valuable employment outcomes. As a result, this means that VR payrolls at these accredited CRPs have also been reduced. In FY 2018, GATES member VR payrolls equated to $11.5 million. Compare that to FY 21, where payrolls were just at half that, $5.7 million. One of our member CRPs dropped out of the provider ranks with GVRA due to the lack of referrals and contract utilization this past year. This means that GVRA has one less CARF-accredited and skilled provider to assist with the goal of serving a Georgian with disability. With businesses eagerly looking for employees and tens of thousands of Georgians with disabilities awaiting the opportunity to work, it is imperative that we maximize our efforts in matching these two entities in the most efficient way possible. In the FY22 amended budget presentation this past January, GVRA Director Chris Wells laid out a plan with strategic service goals along with predictions for the number of counselors and staffing required, including a mention of reopening priority categories 2 and 3. Without adequate funding for GVRA and a dedicated line item for the CRPs, it will be difficult to ensure that valuable and accredited providers will have the staff to accommodate the influx of people that have been awaiting services. Gates CRPs stand ready to help serve more people with disabilities through training and job placement if the funding and policy is consistent. Without adequate funding and a focused policy, the system will remain inefficient and ineffective and therefore continue to underserve the thousands of Georgians with disabilities seeking employment. I'll close with this. Our Gates member providers are here to serve Georgians with disabilities first and foremost. We prioritize individuals with disabilities. An average of 31% of Gates member CRP staff are employees with a disability. Despite the challenges of the last year, Gates CRPs put 1,215 individuals with disabilities to work. Our goal is to give people the independence they desire and help local employers fill job vacancies here in Georgia. Direct investment to accredited CRPs in a budgeted line item will ensure that individuals with disabilities are being served and at much greater capacity. This is an investment in our people, an investment in local businesses, and an investment in Georgia. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Dempsey and committee for hearing, and I know this is a long day. Thank you so much. You know, I've been down here 26 years advocating for issues. And when I started thinking, you know, I'm here looking at policy, looking at making sure that I represent my clients. And over 26 years, I've become an advocate. And I can say that with the pride that the organizations that work, you know, one thing, when we listen to Chairman Wells talk about GVRA, we listen to public administration, which is an important piece. It's what GVRA should be doing. What we didn't hear was about the services for the people. And I think that's some of the hard part of this. I have been around since GVRA has moved from Department of Human Resources to Department of Labor and now attached to Department of Human Services. And along the way, it seems like we're not thinking about the people being served. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the folks in Cobb County when Tommy Novus does their work and they see a help wanted sign and they go into that restaurant and say, what are you looking for? And the person says, I really need someone at our cash register and I really need someone to count our stuff and do our numbers. And Tommy Novus says, you know what? I got Sue over here. That'll be a great match for you. Let me introduce you. Tommy Novus brings Sue to that restaurant and they start to have a dialogue. And the owner says, oh, this is really amazing. Sue really is good with numbers. And Sue says, yeah, and I have autism. That's why I'm so good with numbers. That's what we need. We need direct investment in Tommy Novus. Then you think about the places down in Eastman, Georgia, South Georgia, where we've got our private providers at Easter Seals. When you think about they're going into Home Depot and they're going to Bill, who is the general manager of their local Home Depot, and saying, Bill, I got this guy. He's a veteran. He's an incredible forklift driver. Can we get him a job? Home Depot says, absolutely, we need it. And our Easter Seals folks say, guess what? We're going to be with you the whole time. We're going to make sure Bill gets the mental health because he's got PTSD. We're going to make sure Bill has a transportation because he's lost a limb. That is what we're talking about. And we had that direct investment prior to 2012. When you look at the paper that I'm going to leave with you, and it's just 2 pages, I want you to think about, we need to make sure that GVRA has the resources to do the public administration, the policy, the budgeting, the coordinating, the eligibility, the contract management, the evaluation. But where are the services to the people? And every time GVRA has gotten cut, it seems like we close categories. It happened in 2014. It's happened now. And so what we're saying is, let's make an investment. It is literally $1 we put in, $4. We left $31 million at the federal level last year. We don't need to do that again. And our request for 3.4 million directly to services, directly to community service boards or community service providers will bring down $12.6 million. That's $16 million of putting people back to work. That solves mental health issues. That solves economic issues. That brings the incredible dignity that folks are looking at. We are still have only 17% of people with disabilities who want to work can work. That's down from 19% before the pandemic. We need to bring that back up. So we're solving so many different issues: independence, dignity, and their self-worth by making sure that our local community service, our local community rehab providers can get the job done. And you can steward that money in your local communities. That's what we need. So I'd love to stop and answer any questions that you have.
Representative Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do y'all have training facilities? In other words, buildings that they go into? Where are those located?
And in your community, Easter Seals and Bobby Dodd Institute and Goodwills, they all have training facilities. And the forklift, I'm giving an example, they have forklifts. They take people and they train them how to use them. They have assembly lines. They have cash registers. They are doing their training right there on site. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions or comments I see. Thank you for continuing to tell your story and to persevere. I think it's great that y'all pushed right on and have helped some very fortunate people to be employed. So thank you.
We kept going and we just made it through. So we need y'all help to cross that finish line. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Do y'all have any, are there any employers out there that employ large numbers of your people?
Yeah, Home Depot is a huge partner. Lowe's is a huge partner. Publix is a huge partner. Kroger's are a huge partner. And yes, absolutely. And especially in those rural areas. Like I'm literally saying the board, their boards are sitting the community leaders of those large employers. And so that's where that relationship, it's a lot of great synergy works.
You talked about Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff. How about in the manufacturing area? Do y'all have a good many that do that?
Do you want to talk about, that?
Yeah, I mean, any of the providers have a relationship with large manufacturing firms. I know New Ventures in LaGrange works with local organizations there as well. So they're definitely in manufacturing as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, y'all hang with us. I know you're used to this. I know you're used to it, but we're getting close. It's not too much longer. Hang on. So Jen King with Georgia CASA.
Madam Chairwoman and the members of the committee, for your consideration and support for the many critical services and supports for children and families in Georgia. I'm Jen King with Georgia CASA and represent an awesome network of advocates all across the state. Many of you are familiar with CASA advocacy in your local communities. Across Georgia, there are more than 2,700 CASA volunteers who advocate for children involved in dependency proceedings due to child abuse or neglect. The majority of children for whom we advocate are removed from their homes and are placed in foster care. CASA volunteers are active and connected to children and families, serving nearly 10,000 children each year, over 55% of children in state custody. As workforce stability and recruitment issues that you've heard here today continue to impact the entire state, the consistent presence of a trusted adult advocate has remained a stable resource, not only to children, but to courts, defects case managers, caregivers, and families. CASA volunteers are often the most consistent source of information on any given case until that case reaches permanency, offering not just information that can be found in a case file or report, but the small comforting details that are all too often don't make it to the level of the court or the case file. CASA volunteers are present in court hearings, visit regularly with children, collaborate with the parties involved in the case, and provide firsthand objective information to the court. The CASA network is powered by 2,700 volunteers, 250 local staff, more than 500 board members, and countless donors and partners. The support for CASA advocacy comes from many sources, including the juvenile court, where judges appoint CASA advocates at the onset of a defects case. Coupled with local, state, and federal funding, CASA is supported by a mix of public and private dollars. The state funding for CASA has fueled the expansion of CASA to nearly every county in Georgia, most recently last year to Henry and Lowndes. We are requesting $200,000 in additional funding to support CASA advocacy across the state, the majority of which will be distributed to local CASA affiliates who in the past 2 years have experienced growth in the number of children in foster care in their area, have served a greater percentage of children, or have expanded their service area. The $164,000 would support increases for more than half of the 44 local affiliates to maintain these increased service levels. For affiliates like CASA of Northwest Georgia in Bartow County and CASA Glen in Coastal Georgia, who served all the children in their original geographic areas and expanded to neighboring counties, or through increases in volunteers exceeding previous service levels, like CASA programs in Savannah, Chatham, the Talawega Judicial Circuit, and Athens, Oconee. These funds recognize and support the continued expanding service areas. The remaining $36,000 would restore a reduction from 2020 that supports advocacy across the entire state. Despite the 2020 cuts, no local affiliate experienced a reduction in their award amount, as we are well aware that local fundraising and other revenue streams have been interrupted and will be slow to return. While we are all still emerging from the pandemic's impact, for CASA programs, we see this in volunteer recruitment. This past fall, Georgia CASA coordinated a statewide recruitment campaign that resulted in over 1,000 inquiries from interested and prospective volunteers across the state. Endeavors like these support local affiliates who train more than 800 CASA volunteers each year. An increase of $200,000 would recognize gains in children with a CASA volunteer and continue to target state dollars to geographic areas that have demonstrated the increased need for CASA advocacy and the ability for CASA to serve a greater percentage of children in state custody. I have flyers here for anybody who hasn't yet had one that I can leave, but thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you do. I don't see any questions or statements. I know we're also grateful for the work y'all do in each and every community.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, next, Jack Overman, DFACS SAGs. We've been waiting to hear from you. We've been waiting.
I wanted to be first, but I said, no, it was nice to hear everybody talk about what we do.
That's
It's
right.
kind of crazy in the fact all these people talk about, but anyway, I apologize.
Get comfortable and pull that microphone up so everybody out there listening can hear you.
Well, I have to be careful. You're right, Madam Chair, members. I appreciate you being here to listen to us.
Pull that mic up.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Great.
First of all, for anybody that doesn't know what SAAG stands for, it's SAG, Special Assistant Attorney General. We are appointed by the Attorney General. We don't work for the state. The state doesn't pay us as far as salaries, et cetera. We are contract attorneys. I think that's the first thing and most important thing to understand. So when you're talking about $57.50 an hour, which was already brought up earlier, and I thought it was interesting from DHS's presentation and the questions you asked, and I appreciate it. The terms they used was challenging legal system. Yes, there's an issue with the pay, et cetera. The pay adjustments are challenging. I was at the SAG conference with Mr. Hempfling, who spoke earlier. And you're right, we are reaching a crossroads. And the fact that he did mention that I lost an associate attorney, we can't pay him enough. Even if I paid her $57.50 an hour, I lose money because I got to pay all the payroll and everything else. It's sad, but my gray hair indicates how long I have done this. Most of the SAGs at the conference, you ask, how many are new 1 or 2 years? And you looked around and very few hands went up. You started going 15, 20, and I'm not going to tell you how many years I've done it. And the hands kept going up. We are reaching a crossroads here where I'm 70 years old. Do I love this work? Yes. Do I still do it? Yes. But pretty soon, the new generation has got to take. The other thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands, it's a passion. We protect the most valuable asset in this state, the children, the youth. The Attorney General appoints us, but our client is Department of Human Services, not just Department of Family and Children or Division of Family and Children Services. It's the department. Not only children, the aging. Guess who gets the call when it's time for somebody that's an elderly's been abused and neglected? We do. I also would like for everybody to understand from our standpoint, it says we're seeking pay equity. I think it's already been brought up once. Pay equity would mean that the average SAG gets $142.50 an hour. It would take almost triple what I make now to reach pay equity. All we're looking for is a budget item to put in the budget for a $20 an hour increase for us from $57.50 to $77.50. The other issue we have is paralegals. Anybody that's dealt with the legal system knows that my boss is my paralegal. I'm honest. She tells me what court to go in. I'm in court every day. I have Henry County and Fayette County. I also back up for Spalding, Pike, Upson. So you can tell why I needed another associate attorney. We are going all the time. Unfortunately, I lost her. Guess who has to take the slack? I do right now. I am desperately seeking to find an attorney. It is almost impossible to find someone at $57.50 an hour. My paralegal, my attorney I had before, I hired her out of law school before she was even passing the bar. But I knew she had the ability. She was passionate about it. She passed, and I trained her for 2 years. I can't hold her back. When a firm in Atlanta wants to pay her twice her salary plus benefits plus everything else, I can't do that. So the bottom line, we're asking for a $20 an hour for us. Is it pay equity? No, because the average is $142.50 an hour for all SAGs except us. We're $57.50. The other thing is paralegals get paid. We can bill $25 an hour for a paralegal. Do you know the average paralegal salary is $85 an hour? Again, it's right back to the same thing again. I'm trying to make ends meet. At the SAG conference, it was amazing to me how many special assistant attorney generals were looking for other attorneys, asking for help. Did they have anybody that could use? We're not part of the budget. I thought the questions are very appropriate for DHS when you were talking about, and the director made the comment, the budget director says, yes, it's challenging. That's an understatement. We are really at a point now where if we don't get any money, it's going to be very difficult to do this. The other thing that you have to explain to attorneys, and to say, I apologize, I'm very passionate about this, is your job is 24 hours a day. People say, oh yeah, we work 25. No. A special assistant attorney general starts out in court 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, all day long. We're in court, in and out of court. Then the real work starts, because not only are we preparing for the next day's trials, the phone rings at 11 o'clock. This is what I call my judge's phone. It rings. Supervisor in Henry County calling. 11 o'clock at night. We've got a sad child that called 911 because mama wouldn't wake up. They wake mama up. EMTs do. The child has nobody. We just can't go out and say, oh, come on, you can come with us. I get the call. We have to go, I have to call a judge. That's why I call this my judge's phone. And when they answer the phone, they don't say hello. They say, "What you got, Jack? It better be good." I said, "Judge, it's always good when I call you. I don't ever call just for any reason." We have to get a removal order. That's where my role starts. 13,000 kids in foster care. Guess who is the first attorney that touches them? Every one of them. You're looking at us. We have to work. So the judge gives us 1 o'clock in the morning. He calls, he says, "Yep, you've got custody. I want to have a hearing at 9 o'clock in the morning." There are orders to be prepared. Everything has to be done. Guess who that falls on? It's us. Fortunately, I have a very good paralegal that doesn't mind to be waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning. So the main concern I have more than anything else is for the children in Georgia. We really need the help. All the questions you asked DHS and everything else, I bit my tongue because I wanted to answer, but it's not my place. I represent the kids. And don't get me wrong, DHS does a great job. They really do. Unfortunately, with the budget issues, I understand that they couldn't include us in the increase. So that's why I'm here, because we desperately need that. We talked about the Office of Child Advocacy. Notice what they said. We have to go to court sometimes. We get the screen outs. Guess who's involved in that? You're looking at us. Everything that happens, we touch. So I could sit here and go all day. I could talk hours about cases we have and what we're doing. But I would ask that this item be placed in the budget 20 hours as a start. It's not the final, but it's a start. Also for $15 an hour more for our paralegals, at least get us up to the point where I can find somebody that will consider coming to work for us. The Attorney General does have a challenge because they know that it's an issue that we have. But I would ask you to consider that. I can answer any questions, and I know you've probably got a lot because we do a lot of this, but you asked the right questions before. And I really think from our standpoint, we're on the right track. We just need help to keep us going where we need to go. And we can find some new attorneys that are willing to help and do this. So but that's all I have. If you got any questions.
Rosa Mathieu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Overman, for being who you are.
Well,
I called your boss and asked her to watch us on TV.
Oh, thank you.
But she just texted me and she said, I can't. I'm on the phone talking to a client.
See, isn't that
preparing.
amazing how that works?
So, but what I'd like to know, and I think I already know the answer, out of that $57.50, who pays for the postage? Who pays for the travel time? Who pays for what else do you guys
Right.
have?
Well, we got copy fees and we can bill so much per copies. They'll allow us to do that. Okay. There's some things we can do, but basically we take the travel out of our hide most of the time. When I go to Henry County, sometimes I can bill for travel. Sometimes I can't. Virtual has helped us with that. The main concern is we have to have an office. We have to have a phone system. We have to have all the things that an attorney would have. We don't get reimbursed for that.
Do the counties pay anything towards that?
No, ma'am. And the other thing, talking about counties, and I'll just bring this up. When you walk into court and you get paid $57.50 an hour, and then you look at opposing counsel who's been appointed, he gets $100 an hour. You get at somebody else that the county's paying $80 an hour, and I'm sitting there saying, I'm in the wrong business. But I'm not, because we're there for the kids, and that's what's important. So no, to answer your question is the county doesn't reimburse us for anything else. We deal with all the people here that, when I heard youth villages and this, that, and the other, guess who deals with them? We do. We are a multifaceted job, I guess is a good way to do it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. That's why I'm sitting here. It's because I think it's important. We have young attorneys that need to get involved in this, and we really need the money to help with that. But to answer your questions, no, we don't get anything with that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Oh, the other thing is, and I shouldn't say this, but I will. You asked the question about adoptions and the reason, have they slowed down, gone up, whatever, anything. Don't forget, most adoptions, we have to terminate parental rights. The SAGs, the department. So we're involved in that. We've had more and more adoption attorneys calling us and saying, did you terminate on the rights? No, the parent surrendered. They're getting very reluctant to do it without a termination. And so we're doing more and more terminations, even if the parents give up the rights, just to make it good and clean, because the worst thing to ever do is have a child have adoption challenged a year or two after it was done because they said the parents came back and they wanted the child for whatever reason. So that's another passion of mine. And the fact, make sure it's done right. We try to do it and it's good. But that answers that question. It wasn't my place, but I didn't say anything before. So adoptions, I think, are on the increase, but we're having to do a lot more work for the adoptions. That's what's happening. Thank you.
Representative Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You were talking about the number of attorneys. How many attorneys do you need?
Well, I'll leave that to the Attorney General. Here's the way it works for special assistant attorney generals. Every county or circuit has ones appointed. Sometimes there are two circuits that have one attorney. Logically, if you're in the Atlanta metro area, there are a lot of special assistant attorney generals. I represent all of Fayette County. Okay. I'm in court most every week. I represent half of Henry County. There's another SAG that works with me in Henry County. And I have more work in Henry County than I do in Fayette. So it depends on the metropolitan area, et cetera. You go to South Georgia, some SAGs will be one SAG for the whole circuit, 4 counties. And they do that. And it works out. If you ask me how many we need, that's a question for the Attorney General, what they need. I know from our standpoint, we get to the point that we work full time and we're getting to the point that we don't have any more hours to work because we're working so much. That is usually when we ask. And in this case, I would not ask the Attorney General for another SAG. I would ask for an associate attorney to represent. I am the SAG, but I'd have an attorney represent me basically in the court. That's who I lost before because she was working most of Fayette when I was doing most of Henry. So I'd like to answer that question, but I don't know how many you need. But each circuit county has, and I think there are 100 and don't quote me. I know there are over 100 SAGs. And of course, it's just DHS. You know, you've got SAGs for DOT, et cetera, special assistant attorney generals there.
Well, let me ask you this. Several years ago, we were having trouble getting doctors to go to South Georgia and work in the communities and stuff. And we told them if they go down there and work for so many years that we would help their debt. What if we did something like that?
And if I was a state employee, I think that would be great. But see, I am not a state employee. I'm a contract attorney. I'm an attorney just like a domestic relations attorney, real estate attorney or whatnot. But I am representing the Attorney General contracts with me to represent Department of Human Services. And that's what I do. And again, would that work? I can't say it won't work, but since I'm not a state employee, that would probably not apply to me.
Well, you've already got your debt paid off.
I wish. My other boss is down on the coast. She wants to build a house down there. And I said, no, thank you. But anyway.
But it seems like that there ought to be some novel ideas floating around. Have you looked at what other states do with this?
Well, I swore when I retired, which I haven't yet. When I retired, I was going to put a proposal out to try to do something with the budget as far as combining, I'll just say, different avenues of budgetary parts of the attorneys that represent a dependency action, a delinquent action, something to do with the budget. I do not have an answer for that. I wish there was an innovative. If you could find it, please let me know.
I'm gonna bend the appropriations chair here sometime this week. See if we can't figure out if that's something that might be possible to try to get some of these young lawyers. It would give them a world of experience. And if we said, you come out and you work for us for 7 years, half your debt's gone.
And I think from the standpoint, if we were, as I say, state employees where the state could do something like that, or y'all.
Well,
could do
doctors are
something like
not state employees.
that. No, but there has to be a grant or something done,
Okay,
I think,
all right.
with that.
Yeah.
And I do not know, that is y'all's job. I do not know wherewithal how to do that. But from our standpoint right now, it is here. It is here in the fact that I've heard so many attorneys looking for associates, trying to find work because the work is there. And don't get me wrong, if we did it for $77.50 an hour, it's still a passion. That's the reason we're doing for that. Because at $142.50 an hour average, it would take another $85 an hour just to bring us up to that. So
Well,
that's where
that's
we.
that's one of the things you get when you work for government.
I understand.
If you go to the private area, then your salary goes up, but you work for a government entity and you're, I don't know why they think salary is less, but that's what government pays. So.
And we certainly understand that.
Okay.
And that's why, even though we're not part of the budget, we're just asking for it says pay equity. It's just a start. See if
Okay.
we can get things up. And there'll be a happy medium somewhere.
Right.
You're right along the line where that
I
happens.
appreciate your dedication. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate y'all being here and considering putting something in the budget for us. We really
Absolutely.
do.
Thank you for hanging with us too and
Thank you.
sharing your stories and your work.
Anytime.
Appreciate
And if you've
it.
got any questions, I know Wendy's, call
We'll
me.
find you.
Call me. I'll be
Without a
glad to
doubt.
answer them. I may not have the right answer, but I have an answer. Let's put it that
We'll
way.
find you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Miss Shelley, Statewide Independent Living Council, you want to ride up here toward the desk? And Amber's going to help you get that microphone. There are 4 more signed up, so y'all just hang with us. We're going to get there. Everybody's message and heart is so very important.
Thank you so much. Close enough. I will do my best to speak up. I do not envy you, but I'm gonna add a little bit more to the plate. But thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. First off, I am incredibly appreciative of the amended FY 22 budget. And it's going to do a world of good for the Independent Living Network. Thank you so much. And I know that you are aware of the challenges that the Centers for Independent Living have faced over the last year and a half, but I also want to be able to tell you about some of the good things that have taken place over this year and a half, and especially this last particular quarter. We continue to partner and work with the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. They are our fiscal agent, but we also do contract work with them with the pre-employment services. The Centers for Independent Living also going to the high schools, training individuals with disabilities, getting them ready for employment opportunities when they transition out of high school into adulthood. We work closely with the Division of Community Affairs with our home access program, providing modifications to individuals, home modifications, so that people with disabilities can safely navigate their home. And please excuse my voice, it's a little cool in here to me, and it doesn't take a whole lot to throw it off. We also continue to work with the ADRC, the Aging and Disability Connection, Resource Connection. A lot of the referrals actually come from this portal. And we also work closely with the Atlanta Regional Commission. We're working on a transportation grant, the ITS for Us, and they're using us as a model for individuals with disabilities to find better transportation options. We're also working closely with the Division on Aging Services. The centers help transition individuals with disabilities out of nursing facilities. So we're doing a lot of great work with these partners. We're not just some fly-by-night organizations. We actually had centers to launch a mobile office because during the pandemic, people with disabilities became even more isolated. And so this is giving them an opportunity to get to these underserved communities and counties in order to provide services. And again, please excuse me. One of our centers actually established and launched, it's called Hire Me Georgia. Hire Me Georgia is connecting employers with employees with disabilities. Right now, it is in the Augusta area, but we're looking to expand that statewide, hopefully sooner than later. And we also continue to have COVID testing at a lot of our facilities. We've been working closely also with the Department of Health. And so you can see that we do a lot of good. We prepare individuals with disabilities. And again, I think I've mentioned before, we have a model from the womb to the tomb. The only criteria is that you have a disability, but we do not turn anybody away who is in need of services. And what the Statewide Independent Living Council has done, we have put together a mini documentary that talks about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there were some key people with here in the state of Georgia that was instrumental in its passage. And so what we're trying to do right now is to have this mini documentary placed into the school system as an educational piece, whether it's for history and or social studies, because the act was actually a civil rights movement. And so we feel that this education, something that is missing, needs to be in the school system. So we're doing a whole lot of good work. We hope that we can continue, but of course with the cuts, it made it very difficult and challenging. We need to make sure that we have qualified staffers in order to be able to reach more and more individuals. We're asking for a full restoration of the $809,980 to be added to the FY23 budget. And I would also like to be so boldly to ask, even if you would consider rounding that up to maybe from 1 million, we need to make sure that we strengthen our existing centers. We want to get back to doing what we do best, and that is providing services for people with disabilities in all facets. And we think that the additional $200,000 would be a great benefit. I know that you remember me from a few years ago. We were trying to fill in the state with satellite offices. But right now, we just want to strengthen what we have. And we believe that and trust that this committee can see the need. We want you to come and visit our centers. And we'll also be having another opportunity next month as we gather to talk about all the good work that we're doing, that we have done, and what we're going to be doing in the future. My voice is gone, but if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer that. On the second page, I'm so sorry. Yeah. You can see the money that was lost and how we would restore it to the centers accordingly with the $809,000. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Shelley, it looks great. You've done a great job of explaining and getting it right here for us in time to work on it. Thank you so much. And thank you for hanging with us. I'm sorry, I
Absolutely.
really
No
didn't
worries.
see you back there in that corner, or I probably would have cut you ahead of line, okay? I'd have broke in for
appreciate
you.
it. I get it where I fit in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You
Have a
travel
good rest of your
safely.
evening. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, next, Gay Smith, Georgia Family Connection.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you.
Out of respect for your time, I know you're tired. We were busy scratching some of our testimony out because we do have 2 handouts for you that are pretty, they're pretty self-explanatory, but we did want to come see you personally and thank you for your past support. My name is Gay Smith, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Georgia Family Connection Partnership, which I'll be referring to as GAFCP. Georgia Family Connection was created 30 years ago by this body and private foundations. GAFCP was established in 2001 as a public-private partnership to support the network of family connection collaboratives to improve conditions for children and families in every single county in Georgia. It is the only network of its kind in the nation. We work hard to make the most of our community's resources to ensure the best possible outcomes for everyone, but especially for our most vulnerable neighbors. GAFCP works with state-level partners to gather the latest and most reliable data, research, best practices, and information from state-level conversations and delivers that information to communities in a way that is useful to them. Each local collaborative then takes that information and integrates it with their understanding of local issues and together develops a plan. GAFCP also serves as the host organization for Get Georgia Reading and works closely on joint initiatives with DECAL, DOE, DFACS, and GMA, along with a host of others, too long to list, to be sure that we are supporting state-level priorities. Finally, we know that the collaborative table is always key to meeting the needs of children and families. But in times of crisis, as we experienced in March 2020, it becomes critical. Because of relationships and partnerships existing at all levels, many needs have been met across Georgia that might otherwise have fallen through the cracks. GFCP has tracked the many ways the Family Connection Network stepped up and pivoted during the pandemic, and it's been nothing short of amazing to be a part of it and witness it. We know very well that our work to recover from this pandemic is not done, and we're committed to standing shoulder to shoulder with all of our partners and with you to support our state's recovery. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Irene Barton, who leads this work in her community with the Cobb Collaborative, and she can share what this looks like on the ground.
Thank you, Gay. Thank you, Chairwoman Dempsey and members of the committee. My name is Irene Barton, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Cobb Collaborative, which is the Georgia Family Connection Collaborative serving our community. Like our counterparts across the state, we are the nexus of cross-sector collaboration, paving the way for improved outcomes for children and families by leveraging resources and assets and improving strategies, implementing strategies. I also serve as the elected chair of our statewide peer-to-peer network. So I'm here today to not only share some of the work going on in Cobb, but also to elevate the voice of my fellow coordinators across Georgia. This group convenes on a regular basis to raise common concerns, share best practices, and serve as a liaison between GAFCP and the collaborative network. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little more detail about our work in Cobb County, specifically over the past 2 years. I've been proud to reside in Cobb for nearly 31 years and have been a witness and community leader in many of the changes that have occurred there. Just to ground everybody, we are a county of over 750,000 individuals, and about a quarter of that population are children under the age of 18. We have the state's second largest school system and also have another school system, Marietta City Schools, in the heart of our community. We lead 3 main initiatives in Cobb: third grade reading proficiency, civic engagement, and mental health. We began our work in the mental health space in 2019 as we reviewed local data provided by GAFCP, engaged in conversations with our partners about their pain points in the delivery of their programs and services to residents in Cobb, and reviewed research and best practices. One of the reasons we focus on trauma and preventing future trauma as part of our mental health initiative is because of the long-term impacts to our state and to the health and welfare of our local Cobb neighbors. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI, states that 1 in 5 American adults has a mental health condition, and that was prior to the pandemic.
We were not alone in this focus, as demonstrated by our budget request handout you've received that shows 70 collaboratives were already working on mental health programming last year. In Cobb, our partners at Surf Familia report a 231% increase in reported child sexual abuse since the pandemic began, and we know that occurrences of personal domestic violence have increased as well. Cobb Collaborative's mental health awareness campaign called Mind Your Mind is designed to raise awareness of mental health conditions, reduce stigma, and promote resiliency. We have a particular focus on trauma-informed systems change, as well as suicide prevention and awareness. During 2021, we trained 1,567 individuals through 73 workshops or events. We began publishing our monthly Mind Your Mind newsletter, which garnered nearly 3,500 opens. We created a digital toolkit, and we launched our podcast, Mind Your Mind Speaks, which brings together subject matter experts and community leaders to raise awareness, share resources, and inspire action. While much of our work is focused on youth, we also support other populations. For example, we are hosting a town hall in March focused on the mental health of our senior population in partnership with Cobb County government. We are also examining life expectancy in certain census tracts in Cobb alongside the Atlanta Regional Commission. We've brought mindfulness and resiliency trainings for early education providers and have several more planned this year. This is just a small taste of what we are doing in Cobb County, and my counterparts across the state are working alongside their local partners to address their community needs as well. As I travel across our beautiful state, I realize that the life of a farmer is vastly different from my own life as a suburbanite. And I realize that matriculating through a school system that may have only 1 or 2 classes for each grade level is vastly different than the experience of Cobb County's $110,000 students. And that's why your investment in the local family connection collaboratives are so vital. They allow local decision-making, local data, and local partnerships to come together and leverage resources to best meet the needs of our individual communities. My counterparts are working alongside their local universities, their local DFACS offices, their local faith leaders, and many others to address issues and craft solutions. And as Gay mentioned, all of that work is supported, connected, and enhanced at the state level by GAFCP. You'll agree with me, there's still much work to be done. As you see on your info sheet, 95 collaboratives plan to implement programs or activities to prevent or address mental health concerns this year. But like Cobb, many of them and GFCP are also addressing additional state priorities like early learning, reading proficiency, youth development, and maternal and infant health. With your support, Family Connection can maintain and expand our capacity and continue working on state and community priorities such as these. That's why we're respectfully requesting that you restore $2,000 to each local collaborative and $100,000 to GAFCP to reverse cuts we sustained during and prior to the pandemic. And if possible, an additional $2,500 for each local collaborative so that we can continue meeting increasing needs of our communities post-pandemic. We are so grateful for your partnership over the past 30 years, and we thank you for considering our request for support going forward so that together we can continue to improve outcomes for Georgia's children and Georgia's families. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Anulowicz has a question or comment from Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
It is a comment, and I'll be very quick because I know the hour is late, but I just wanted to thank you for coming and sharing all of the amazing work that you are doing. I'm very aware of it living and working in Cobb County, but the work that the collaboratives do throughout Georgia is just so remarkable. And I really wanted to thank you for being here today and for being so patient and for sharing all of the amazing things you're doing with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any others, but I join Representative Anulowicz, as I know all of us do. We know how deep the work is that y'all do and how much you multiply those funds. So thank you. Okay. Mary Lee Boatwright for the Alzheimer's Association.
Go first, because she's got a commitment she needs to
That's awesome. Well, it's the two of y'all and then one very important person that I feel very bad, but he's on the bottom. He's on the last on the list and I'm just following it. So I'll apologize. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was telling Mary Lee I have a commitment. So thank you for allowing me to go first. Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Melanie McNeil. I'm the state long-term care ombudsman. I'm testifying in support of the Georgia Council on Aging's co-age priority request for $500,000 for a campaign to raise awareness about the long-term care ombudsman program. The Federal Older Americans Act created the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program to provide an independent voice to residents of long-term care facilities. Ombudsman representatives enter long-term care facilities to observe the conditions and to observe how the residents interact with the staff. They visit privately with residents, and if the residents give permission, we assist residents in trying to resolve concerns that they might have. Often, ombudsman representatives assist residents in addressing concerns before they become bigger problems. So sometimes it might be just a simple, a resident's lost their laundry and needs some assistance in trying to recover their laundry. Sometimes a resident might want to take a bath at a different time, and the resident might be reluctant to ask for that change, but the ombudsman representative, if they have permission, can work with the facility to make things better for that resident. Sometimes it's something more complicated. Sometimes a resident needs a change in their care plan, and the ombudsman representative assists with that resident in talking with the facility about changing their care plan. Since the pandemic, a number of our concerns that have been raised, the issues that we've addressed, are encouraging facilities to figure out how to allow residents to visit with friends and family. That's been a huge issue since the pandemic began in March of 2020. Because of the restrictions that COVID has required, it's even more important not only that residents know about our program, but their family and friends know about us too. So every long-term care facility is required to display a poster that we provide that has our information so that residents know how to reach us. And family members and friends who visit also can see the posters and know how to get a hold of us. But with restrictions from COVID, so remember, residents have been often confined to their rooms, not allowed to congregate. So they're not out among the facility, not observing our poster. Friends and families aren't visiting, so they're not seeing the information either. And so they don't know how to reach us. So what we're requesting are funds to develop a campaign to raise awareness about our program. The campaign that we're proposing would be modeled after the Department of Public Health campaign, Think About It, which was a campaign to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease. They used a consultant to develop a campaign to do things like put messages on MARTA trains and buses, get CVS stores to provide inserts in their bags, billboards, radio spots, Facebook ads, videos to play in movie theaters before a feature. So what we are looking for is a $500,000 appropriation, one-time appropriation that would allow us to do something similar. I can tell you, we are really, really good advocates, but we are not very good at public relations. So we need a little help with the public relations part. So I encourage you to provide some funding for us for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope your evening goes well and that you travel safely. Mary Lee Boatwright. Quinn, sorry.
That's okay, Chair Dempsey. Okay, Amber, I've actually got slides so I can wake you all up. I've got to pull them up. That's right. All right. So as the chair said, I'm Mary Lee Boatwright Quinn from the Alzheimer's Association Georgia chapter. And luckily, Sheila preceded me and gave you some great statistics about Alzheimer's disease. So, and you also have our fact sheet in the packet that I left for the whole committee. The Alzheimer's Association is the most referred to data source on Alzheimer's information, and we release our facts and figures every March. So this is our 2021 data, and soon you'll be getting the 2022 report when it comes out. But the main thing I want you to know is the prevalence increase is tremendous. And I think many folks have been impacted by Alzheimer's, but they may, and some haven't, but maybe you don't know just the devastation, and that Alzheimer's kills more than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. As well, 1 in 3 seniors will die with an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis. So we are coming to you all to ask for an investment of $1.25 million to create a dementia care specialist program that would be housed in the Department of Human Services Division of Aging Services. And this funding would allow for 1 dementia care specialist in each of our area agencies on aging. And in the summer, when we started researching this, we were looking at a model program in Wisconsin that has been highly successful. And so we started talking to our area agency on aging directors to see if they felt this program could work here and if there was a need. And the response was overwhelmingly yes. And so we did more research to find out how much that would cost to have one of these dementia care specialists in each area agency on aging and have a program lead in the Department of Aging. And that program lead would not only be ensuring the integrity and the continuity of the program, but also would be collecting data because we want to ensure that, we want to look at utilization of the program and service capacity so that we can make sure that we're informing the ongoing implementation of the program and adjusting where we need to for quality improvement. So I think you all know, but caregiving for someone with Alzheimer's is quite a bit different than caring for other diseases. We see that folks have to assist with activities of daily living much more often than with other diseases. But on top of that, layer on top of that, that difficulty in communicating as someone gets into the middle and later stages of Alzheimer's disease. So caregiver training is so critical. And that's really what this program would bolster in our dementia care network. The dementia care specialist program, as we're proposing it, would basically, these specialists would provide dementia-specific caregiver training. They could also provide dementia training amongst the other staff members in the aging network, as well as providers and community partners. They would also provide community education on dementia, and they would be able to mobilize dementia-specific resources for the families that are being served through the AAA. And then this is one key factor that was so successful in the Wisconsin program, but they had their dementia care specialists trained in a cognitive screening, a validated cognitive screening module. And that was critical because, as Sheila mentioned to you, so many folks are avoiding those conversations with their doctor, and by the time they're diagnosed, they're into middle and late stages. And these drugs that are coming down the pipeline, they really, to be effective, need to be at the mild cognitive impairment phase or early Alzheimer's phase. So we need to drive that early and accurate diagnosis. So for example, in Wisconsin, the dementia care specialist, when they have a health fair, which I know we haven't had during COVID, but when they have the health fairs and, you have the person who's doing blood pressure screening, well, you have somebody doing cognitive screening. And, at first people will react strangely to that, but that's what we need to happen because we need to break down the stigma. We need folks to be okay with having their memory screened so that they know they need to take the next step to go and talk to their physician or get referred to one of our memory assessment clinics in the Georgia Memory Net program that you all have already invested in. So I won't talk more. I've talked a little bit about the burden of caregiving with Alzheimer's disease, but what I want you to know is there's just a ton of journal articles and evidence-based programs that show that when you equip families and caregivers with caregiver education and support early on, right after the diagnosis, then you're setting them up to be more resilient, to be able to keep their loved one at home longer, to avoid some emergency room visits. And so there's just a ton of data that supports these types of trainings. So as you can see from this very basic model, we've got folks being referred into the Georgia Memory Net. Well, we could potentially have the dementia care specialists referring in to the Memory Net as well, which is increasing the pipeline there. But the Memory Net has a referral out program that we call, they go and if they have a diagnosis, they're immediately referred by the community service educator that we call a CSE to the AAA AA. And that is the Area Agency on Aging, their local Area Agency on Aging, and the Alzheimer's Association. So this is a public-private partnership that's already been working very effectively. And having a dementia care specialist at that AAA level will now be what we call a warm transfer, because you're transferring them to get services at the Area Agency on Aging, but to someone who's been specifically trained in the unique needs of someone with dementia. I also want to mention, because you all have led the way, Georgia was an early adopter of the Georgia Alzheimer's and related dementias state plan, and having an Alzheimer's state plan, as I said, Georgia was an early adopter. I was talking to Representative Benton about this yesterday, that we're just so grateful that you all supported that. And that plan was updated in 2020. And it was signed by the governor in February of 2021, the new updated plan. And this dementia care specialist program actually meets a minimum of 4 goals in that plan. So that means, there are some states that put that plan on a shelf and they never take action, but you all have funded programs that have taken action on our state plan to make Georgia more dementia capable, because the prevalence is increasing and we need to be prepared. So just a list of some of our stakeholder support. We have the support of G4A, the Georgia Association of Area Agencies on Aging, AARP Georgia. We also have a letter of support in your folder from the GUARD Advisory Council, which a number of your members sit on that advisory council. The Georgia Memory Net program, the Georgia Gerontology Society, and the Culture Change Network of Georgia. And I also wanted to mention that we do support the ask that the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman just shared with you about a campaign to increase awareness around the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program. And we, of course, also support the expansion of the Georgia Memory Net program. And we feel like this would just fit right in to really strengthen the dementia care network in our state. And I know y'all are tired, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for that great presentation. Truly, this is a great little slide packet too that you've given us. I so appreciate the collaboration that y'all are all putting together and working to really address the complicated challenges of aging and of Alzheimer's particularly as well. So thank you for that. Together, I think y'all are going to do and continue to do some great things. So
agreed. Not one agency, one department can't do it all, and we have to work together. So
that's right.
You're exactly right.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being patient. Okay. So now I've been sitting here looking over my shoulder, feeling really bad because my friend and former Speaker of the House, Terry Coleman, was on the list last, but it's late. So Terry, please come share with us.
I'll take my face off.
It's okay. I'll take this down. There's going to be a place in heaven for all of y'all.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank you for being patient. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I'm here on behalf of Fulton County. They were third, I think, with the department's recommendation on a behavioral health crisis center. I believe the governor got to the top 2. And we just ask you if you can find the money to help us pick up the Fulton County Behavioral Health Crisis Center. They are willing, they have a facility that fits, we're told, the department's idea of a kind of a building block, something they can work from. It's the Oak Hill facility they're using now. And Fulton County is willing to use that, give it to the department or however it works out. They're also willing to help contribute should they run short, but the request is for 9 million to include it in the priority list, the third in the priority list. So it's a pretty simple request. It's a lot of money, but that's why they call them crisis centers. They're very much needed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? I know Fulton has wanted this and asked for a long time, and there've been different reasons, I'm told, why not. But thank you for being here, for waiting,
Sure,
and for making that ask.
Just so you'll know that the issue of contracting services was a big issue, and I'm told by the department now they feel a little better. It makes them feel good about outsourcing services, and that's been the Fulton model for years. And the reason they did not go into the standard model, mental health model, but as I was saying, the Mary Margaret, Representative Oliver asked me earlier about the issue with Grady, because Grady gets a lot of funding for mental health, but Grady, quite frankly, is a physical emergency level 1 trauma center, and they do mental health as it relates to what's coming in with physical problems and other things, and then they're pretty much a catch-all. But they got more important, I shouldn't say more important, they got a lot higher priority on physical issues, sickness, illness, trauma, and this would help relieve some of the problems they have. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks to each of y'all. We will most definitely adjourn for today, but we're back tomorrow, y'all. Hang in there with me. Hang in. Thank you, committee and Amber.